Okay, let's try this again. Tom, welcome back for the, I don't know, third, fourth time, something like that.
Yeah, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. I'm glad that you keep accepting me back.
You seem to like it. You
I,
seem to be enthusiastic, so you're always welcome back.
I am. I am. I think more people should be enthusiastic. Is that a?
A lot of people aren't very enthusiastic these days about just, I don't know, any number of things going on, whether it's their jobs, whether it's their, I think people are politicked out at this point in a way, but they're also just sort of
Yes.
like trapped in the loop of politics. So I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think about it?
Well, yeah. Well, um, it's very yeah. It's very negative. I don't know. Like yeah, like pretty much people have my feelings is that because of the last 4 years and then the election leading up to this year
Mhm.
and even what's continuing to go on and being opened up to the public, people have been a lot more politically activated,
Sure.
or their eyes have been opened, or
Mhm.
red pilled, or black pilled, however you want to call it.
Good Matrix
But
reference.
yeah, because of the because of the pandemic. Like the pandemic was really the big um, like turning point. It was like the key flashpoint
Mhm.
in people's ability to pay attention because everyone's lives effectively shut down
Sure.
for at least a week, and then we've been trying to prevent the or prevent the curve or slow down the curve
Mhm.
for what has it been over a year now? Like we still
Squash the curve or whatever the
flatten the
terminology,
curve. That's what
flatten
it was.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they told us 2 weeks,
Um,
flatten the curve, and
I
here we
know.
are a week later, Pat.
Yeah. This is not exactly a week, admittedly.
Yeah,
It.
centralized dystopia, baby.
I'm curious if politics is just this doom cycle to me, or this death spiral where it's people just get pulled into the gravity of it, and then it just like they cycle around it, around it,
Yeah,
around it, and they're
latched
just like
onto you
my
can't.
side, your side, Democrats, Republicans, Pelosi, Trump, Biden, Harris, blah blah blah, like
Yeah, it's like
all these
being dragged.
personalities.
It's like being dragged into a whirlpool. It's like you're like help! I need some help. And like
Yeah.
let's say like the Democrat Party, here, take our lifeboat. We'll drag you in. You're like, okay, you take it. And
Once
as it turns out, they're really the Kraken. And then you're like, no, you're
seriously,
being dragged down the whirlpool, down the.
by the way, that's I'm glad that you used the lifeboat analogy, because
Yeah.
I often think about it like this. I don't know if I explained this to you, but I
No.
see that we were all on this giant vessel. Maybe it was the Titanic, and it hit an iceberg, and people don't really realize that the ship is falling apart. At this point, more people have realized that the ship is falling apart, but people
Yeah.
are kind of trying to just like pretend like everything's all right.
Mhm.
And at this point, I'm kind of like, let's start getting people to the lifeboats, and not only to the lifeboats, but start building a new vessel to get people onto or
Yes.
something, rather than just trying to pretend like everything's all right. Like the meme with the
Right.
dog in the house, and the
It's
house is on
burning.
fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
But
says this is fine. This is fine.
exactly, yeah. And
Yes.
so I think that everybody, all this political chaos is like people, after the Titanic splits in half, and then everybody's like floundering around in the water.
Hmm.
I think that's kind of what's happening right now, where people are just grabbing onto whatever debris is near them, whether it's like some identity politics thing or some environmental thing. Like everybody has a cause,
Yeah,
and they're
it's like
trying to.
environmentalism, feminism,
Sure.
social justice,
Even on the.
Democrat, Republican,
Exactly.
far right, far left.
Yeah.
I feel like we've been talking about this ad nauseum.
I know, I
Um,
know. I'm not trying to go down the rabbit hole, but
mhm.
merely just, excuse me, merely just paint the picture of everybody flying around in the water. And there are early sort of, maybe it's not at this level yet, but I want to get it to the point where we're shouting like, are there any survivors out there? Like we have lifeboats, and we're trying to get people to a new boat,
Yeah,
right? Or
you've
a new
seen the
thing.
flares and you've come
Yeah.
over, you've heard the distress signal, and you're trying to pick up the pieces or the people still clinging to life.
Exactly. But right now it's just chaotic noise, and there's no, like, the signal can't be heard through the noise. If you get the
Mhm.
if when with like a radio signal or something
Okay,
like
yeah,
that, or
yeah,
a
okay.
walkie-talkie signal, how
Yeah,
you
the
get
white
the
noise.
static, and
Yes.
it drowns out the signal.
Hmm.
We need more signal. So I'm hoping we get to that. And you have lots of ideas, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I came into this. I was actually inspired by you. You were trying to have. It wasn't Discord. What was the new app you were using
Oh
for
yeah, it's
discussions?
Clubhouse. And I
Clubhouse.
have my
Yeah,
criticisms of it, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you were trying to start a conversation on Clubhouse,
Mhm.
and yeah, it was about topics of what decentralization and what transhumanism
Yeah,
or no or like what did you call it?
technological humanism
Yes,
is the term that I've
technological.
been using. I don't know if it's like, I'm sure somebody has used those terms in together before, but that's the term that I've chosen to use because I think transhumanism sounds kind of freaky. Like
Hmm.
it makes people think that humans are being like erased or they're or I don't know. Like transhumanism sounds too out there.
Hmm.
Technological humanism, people hear, okay, human, I don't necessarily know what humanism is, and then they hear technology and they're like, well, clearly technology is a thing.
Yes.
So it seems more accessible, technological
Right.
humanism.
Right.
um, and when it comes to using Clubhouse, that app, I am excited because it's sort of like social media 2.0, where social media 1.0 was like, let's bitch at each other and let's
Hmm.
just throw the kitchen sink at each other and tear each other down, shame each
A
other.
lot of people don't know this, but Facebook was really just about, hey, who's hot and who's not.
Pretty, yeah, I mean, that's how it started. That's how Mark Zuckerberg originally created the
Yeah.
the version 1.0 or version whatever.
Yeah.
um, but at this point, what was interesting about Clubhouse is it creates these rooms that people can go in, and it's semi moderated, but it's also loose, and it's voice. It's not just, you have more context, not just text where
Hmm.
you have no body language, no voice tones, no facial expressions. But I do have my criticisms of Clubhouse,
Hmm.
but it just seems like a notch above because I really want to get people actually talking about useful stuff and
Yes.
start creating that signal through the
Right.
noise, right?
Now, is it
Yeah.
like a WebEx or like where you can see the actual like video of the people speaking, or is it just a like a picture and you see the like the voice modulated going
It's
up and
it's
down, or
it's a
how does
little avatar of
avatar?
each person. So
Okay.
each person creates their account like any other social media with their photo, and then there's sort of a lobby when you first go into the app. There's just a general, you can see talks
Hmm.
that are happening at that moment, and then there's also a calendar where you can see upcoming
Oh, okay.
talks or topics. And then you can just, when you're in this lobby, you just basically join a conversation, you, if it sounds interesting to
Oh,
you.
if it's
And
public, you can join it.
they're all public, all the
Oh,
ones
they're
that you can
all
see,
okay.
they're all public. So it's like a phone, it's like being in a switchboard or something, and you see these ongoing phone conversations, and you can just join them. You can just listen to them
Yeah.
when you go into the room, or you can raise your hand and they'll invite you onto the virtual stage, basically,
Yeah.
so you can join the and actually
Yeah. The
speak.
virtual floor, and then you can
Mhm. some of
speak
them
if you
they
want to.
some of them they block that ability, which I find really annoying because it's like, I get why they do it because they're trying to control it in a way, but it's like it becomes too confined where it's like, oh, you just made a great point, but I want to talk about that, but I'm just, I'm
Yeah, it's
locked out.
either they want to, or that's their way to make it a private conversation if there is no private feature,
Mhm.
or it could be just another way to create an echo chamber.
Exactly. So there are aspects of it that need to be worked out, but overall it's definitely a major step up.
Oh, good. Yeah, and I remember I was so excited to join in on the conversation, but then as I updated my phone and went to
It's
update the
segregated.
app, it it said, sorry, your phone is too old. You need OS 13.1, and I could only upgrade the 12.5.
That's actually kind of the my maybe biggest criticism right now is it kind of has this artificial scarcity where this is one of the major things that I don't like about college education is that it creates this artificial credential scarcity where it's like,
Hmm.
we only accept blah blah, a couple thousand people, so everybody else, we just told you that college education is essential, and if you don't have it, then like you're screwed,
Hmm.
but we're only going to allow 2,000 people or whatever. So it creates this like demand and it drives up the price. And I think a little bit of the Clubhouse launch, maybe this is just too early. It's kind of their beta run of the platform,
Hmm.
but it does sort of have that artificial scarcity vibe where it doesn't allow people who don't have certain software on their iPhone, and it doesn't allow non-iPhone people. So it's
Hmm.
like there's that exclusivity, which I find kind of
So you
bothersome.
can't, if you have an Android, you can't go on and you need a certain version of iPhone. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot of people. But
Yeah, that's a lot of people you're excluding.
yeah.
You know.
I don't think it was malicious, but I want as many people as possible to get in. But hopefully they scale it soon.
Right. Yeah. Either they scale it, make it more open to the public, or just take that technology and make your own that's open. Tailor it almost exactly alike, I guess, and name it something else.
Yeah.
And do it yourself.
Exactly. I think this will inspire imitation of other competitors, which is good.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, everything is, what's it called? Like, envy, right? Like anytime someone sees something successful, or they become envious and they try to mimic that success, and it doesn't always happen.
Envy, or they just say, "Oh, this is a great idea, but I could do it better." That's what you hope for. It doesn't.
It can be inspirational.
The market of ideas and innovations doesn't have to be like the cutthroat, like 19th century railroad capitalism that we think of when we think about capitalism. Like moving forward, it can be more collaborative and like open source, like we'll share ideas and then we can come up with better ideas rather than just like, I'm holding on to this. This is mine.
Right. And when it's open source, it's open to everybody. They see that the technology is available. So if they say, hey, I want to do that, or I think or I like the idea of Clubhouse, I can do it better, then they can just open the source code and here they go. And that's a great way to decentralize and reduce the red tape, honestly.
Yeah.
And, speed up innovation.
Seriously. And also get people's input. That there are a lot of people, this is what open source has found. I think I'm saying open source as if it's a person. I should say this is what open source has showed a lot of people so far with software, I think, is that there are a lot of people that are willing to just tinker and have fun with things and see what they create. There's a lot of creative energy, and you're going to be able to get input from people who, they'll just help out because they like to help. And
it's like a social network in its own way, but almost harkens back to the original internet concept of the internet, where anonymous users created forums and they just talked about their likes and interests and helped each other along the way, gave advice.
Exactly.
So I like how that harkens back to the old days of the internet in the late 90s, early 2000s, with those AOL chat rooms, forums, pretty basic, before the social media revolution.
Me too. It's kind of, I wasn't really on the internet at that point, but it does remind me of sort of the early days of, you think about what the United States was when it was the colonies, and when it came up with this idea of what if we become a separate entity, what if we become independent. So it's the early days and the creative energy of what do we want this to be, and it was all potential, right? Before it becomes corrupted and in so many different ways. But we do need to get back to a freer both society and digital space that can kind of integrate with each other, that I hope inspire reciprocity and collaboration. I hope inspire or reward integrity and competence in various areas, and basically allow people to just create really cool stuff, really cool experiences.
And that's why I like that you call your idea or major idea was it technological humanism, because I think one of the major drivers, especially in college, of all this social strife and negativity is the humanitarian or the humanities, I should say. Liberal arts degrees in college, like that's driving a lot of the sentiment of a lot of young people. And that's where you see the rise of all the socialist based thinking, all the isms that you can think about.
A lot of 20th century, a lot of the isms were like 20th century creations of social planners and social interventionists, and people being like, I have a brilliant idea, I should be the one to implement it. And they didn't really have regard for what the repercussions of implementing their idea in the real world would be. And that was both on the political left and the political right, and any kind of political ideology. But
I like how that it directly challenges, though.
It does.
Based on the title alone and the thinking. I like that. I think it's a good way, like the
Mhm.
open, for it directly challenges the ideas of the humanities,
Mhm.
just by its title itself, because like humanism. So you think
Sure.
the humanities, but then what you're saying and what you're posting is like a complete 180, completely decentralized, more about like self-focus,
Sure.
you know, not self-help, but like, like
Yeah. Self-help becomes very
advice.
scammy.
Yeah, yeah. I think didn't you
So,
didn't you have something
yeah.
recently
Yeah.
about
Self-help is like an industry where it's
yeah.
like, how can we sell you books
Hmm.
and like basically keep you um uh as incomplete as possible so that you continue to just buy our books and our
Yeah.
products. Yeah. As insecure, I should say.
Hmm.
But yeah, you're right. It's like that's the goal is I don't know if it's a 180, but it is the humanism that sort of degenerated and began to emerge in the 20th century. And God, I wish people knew way more about the 20th century than they do. I wish people
Mm,
had it just, you and I have an appreciation for history
yes.
and a more broad history that incorporates different sides. So many people have no context of how humans got here right now.
Right.
But the humanist ideas got corrupted over time, and it was like our only path to uh, our human goals, or the only achievement that we
Mm,
can find is through these massive entities like industrial nation states and corporations, and it sort of drowns out the individual, and it drowns out the family and the community, and it drowns out those elements that used to be more instrumental, and
mm,
it used to be what connected people to each other and connected people to themselves
mhm.
and gave them purpose and meaning in life. And at this point it's like it's all just been like, nope, you need to just bow down to this behemoth. And I think it's directly related in many ways to why so many people feel psychologically ill, whether it's like super anxious or super
Or
depressed and
hopeless.
or hopeless. Yeah, and I think it's why a lot
Because
of
what's being told to them,
yeah.
whether it's intentional or subconscious,
Mhm.
like uh, there are numerous examples. I mean, I don't know if you could like list, but it's just like the main like vibe is like it's like do what we tell you to do, right?
Mhm.
Like so the current president, like what's their like slogan? They want unity,
Sure.
but you
Unity
know
behind me is sort of the implicit thing, like unity behind
yes,
the
exactly.
president or
Unity in
the
that everyone needs to get off, their high horse
Mhm.
and start thinking the way that we're thinking. And once we all think collectively,
Yeah,
like me, then we'll be unified, I guess. But
sure,
that's not that doesn't sound like the United States to me. That doesn't sound like individualism or freedom or
sure.
it's almost submission to the
It
giant
is.
state.
It is. It's kind of like a big marketing campaign. And the thing that people don't realize is that, once again, I'm going to keep harping on the 20th century, is like there were a lot of horrors of the 20th century, and in sort of the United States was sort of like the least bad option, what emerged in the United States. So obviously you had totalitarianism
Mm,
in these horrible dictatorships like Nazism and communism. But so the United States wasn't a dictatorship, but it was basically like this big marketing campaign, and that's what emerged from it, is consumerism and military industrial complex. And what the United States that we know today is like nothing like what the United States was early
and this is all
late
post
19th
World
century.
War II.
Exactly. It's
This is
crazy
going to
how
really
new this
expand it.
is,
Yeah.
and how people, our parents, the boomer generation, was just born into it, and they just kind of like take it for granted. It's
Hmm.
very anomalous. And two generations later, we're just like, what the hell is this stuff? It's all
Yeah.
breaking down. It's all falling apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Gen Xers kind of got like got inklings of it, but like, they weren't, the technology didn't advance enough, but like,
Mhm.
they saw based on observation, like, hey, what's going on with all these divorces, like, oh, the
Sure.
economy's not as good. Like what, um, the rise of, and then I guess that led to like in the 80s,
Mhm.
the rise of like the new counterculture,
Sure.
with the like heavy metal and
Mhm.
like punks and all that. But yeah, like specifically these current generations, Gen Z and us, the millennials, like
Mhm.
it's been pretty out in the open.
Yeah.
Like the information's all there thanks to the internet, and if And because of COVID, everyone's more politically activated, and because of social media, more connected.
Mhm.
And it's really eye-opening, and it's understandable if you're just blasted with all this information, this horrible truth of
Sure.
what the country is turning into.
Mhm.
It's almost understandable that the majority of people will be very sullen and very um, react like the way they're doing, like, oh, like it almost seems hopeless. Like, what can I do? I'm just
Yeah, because we're used to thinking within, I mean, this is so cliched, but like within the box and within a certain domain. Like we grew up with the idea that politics pretty much is like your path to figuring stuff out, and like if you have a problem, go through politics, right? Like the the post World War II situation, and much of the 20th century in the United States was trying to create this mass democracy of kind of conformist people,
mm,
and we used public relations. I don't know if you've ever heard of Edward Bernays, but
no.
this dude who is like the propaganda genius of the United
Oh,
States.
really? What did he do? Like, what were some
He
examples?
was Freud's nephew, and
Sigmund Freud's
yeah,
nephew.
he's Freud's
Huh.
nephew, so he knew tons about group psychology, and he basically back during the Wilson administration, Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow. So this is around World War
Yeah,
One.
World War One.
Okay.
So that's when Bernays first appeared. But
Mm.
Wilson, he ran on not being isolationist, not getting the United States involved in the war. By the way, this is a point in time where the progressives were like, yeah, they were making they were doing good things, doing national parks, and the reforming meat packing and creating labor standards and stuff like that. They were also obsessed with eugenics. They
Mm-hmm.
were also trying to do lots of creepy things with social engineering, basically set the stage for fascism. Like our eugenics programs and our segregation programs for blacks in the United States are what inspired Hitler to set up his program.
Really?
Yeah. He was like, oh, you can segregate populations. That inspired the Jewish ghettos. And he was like, oh, you can also potentially interfere with people's genes and try to create like a super race,
Yeah.
or get rid of undesirables. So that was all like very integrated into progressives. That's a side note. That's just a creepy side note, but it's worth noting. But Woodrow Wilson ran on this isolationist agenda of keeping America out of stuff, also kind of like keeping the right kinds of immigrants coming in. And then World War One happened, and we started lending. I think it was the Lend Lease Act or something. Started lending ships to the Brits.
Yeah,
So
to the
technically,
British.
we're uninvolved, but we were lending resources, and so at some point in the war, it became very obvious that the Allies, or whatever it was called in the First World War,
I think they were still called the Allies. It was like the Allies
Okay.
versus like what was it, the Threes Alliance? Was that the other?
Triple Entente, I
The
think.
Triple Entente.
Yeah. So it became obvious that the British were not going to win, and that meant that the United States was not going to get its money back, or its debts repaid. And so then it became very necessary to enter the war. And I'm making this understandable. I'm not saying that it's like, things happened exactly this way, but this is the gist of it. So Woodrow Wilson goes to Edward Bernays, and Edward Bernays is this young guy who's trying to promote this idea of public relations and propaganda, basically. And so Woodrow Wilson taps him on the shoulder. He's like, all right, I need you to convince the American people that it's patriotic to go to war. It's going to be the war to end all wars, and it's about liberty, and it's going to,
that's where that term came from.
Yeah, it's going to bring about a new stage in humanity. And like Woodrow Wilson was like this majorly sanctimonious guy who was like super what's the word, arrogant. And he was sort of like, you can only do this through me, and we need to, all these annoying checks and balances, and the Constitution is just in the way. We need to like progress humanity, and we're like the country is like a giant organism. We need to. He was obsessed with like Darwin. The progressives were obsessed with Darwin because it was like the new
20, 30 years
idea.
ago.
Yeah.
Went to the Galapagos. Yep.
Exactly. I know I'm giving you like way more background than might be necessary, but so that was when Bernays first showed up. He basically created the campaign that convinced the United States to.
Is that where Uncle Sam came from?
Maybe. Not. I think Uncle Sam existed before that, but
Oh, he did. Okay.
probably like ratcheted it up.
Yeah, maybe it was just from maybe some cartoonist
Mhm.
probably made, because he's the personification of America.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he's the male personification. Then there's Lady Liberty,
Mhm.
And then there's the bald eagle. So
Exactly.
the animal personification.
Those symbols, and I think we've talked about this too. Anthropomorphizing,
Yeah.
where we project a human image onto something greater than ourselves, where we're like, oh, the United States is like a big person. So we become, I don't know, like cells in that big person or something.
According to Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, we do the same thing with the idea of God, where we're like, oh, God is this big bearded man who's walking around in heaven, and
Right.
we do this with animals too, where we're like, oh, animals think exactly like humans do, and we're with our dogs and our cats, and we're like, oh, what's he thinking right now? The dog or the cat's probably just like, I'm thinking about licking myself. Oh man.
Yeah, I don't think I want to know what my dogs were thinking, but I know what you're talking about. I talk to my dog all the time. He's not a big barker, so I'm like, Sherman, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you looking at? Just ask some questions, and they look back at you with those, doggy eyes, and you think that they're trying to answer you in their head, but no, they're just like, is that human going to give me food now? Is that why he's talking to me?
Exactly.
If I do a thing that he wants, I'll get some food.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean that there's no affection between dog and owner. It doesn't mean anything like that, but it's just purely like we onto other people.
Yeah, you project human traits.
Yep.
Whether it's your own or just a general humanity onto things or other people or objects.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, those symbols like Uncle Sam become very powerful pieces of propaganda. And it makes people more willing to sort of like almost in a proto-fascist kind of way, because fascism was basically perceiving nations as in a state of war. It's taking the idea of, once again, Darwin and natural selection and organisms competing against each other over the course of evolution, and putting that idea on nations. So it's like seeing nations as organisms, and it's saying nations are at a state of constant struggle or war or whatever, and the only way to propagate yourself into the future and succeed is to create the most efficient nation possible, and to be like all in it for the same thing, and we all must band together, and we get like individualism must be swept to the side. We must become a like hyper efficient functioning unit, and
right, it's for the state.
Yeah, and we must like defeat our enemies. So it's like super militaristic and super anti-individualist and pro-corporatist. So all the corporations must, and all the business in the country must align with the goals of the country. And
yeah, what you're saying is very reminiscent of a current rising power, the Chinese or the China and the CCP.
Sure.
That's essentially everything is for the party.
Yeah.
So that could be a big discussion for another day.
Exactly.
But
last note before we switch is, because this is the Edward Bernays. I can be long-winded, but the exposition I think is somewhat more than somewhat important, because it's the context.
Yes, the context.
So Bernays, he reappeared after World War II. I'm sure he did a lot of shit in the 30 years or whatever between, but so he is the guy. Have you ever seen the show Mad Men? Or are you familiar with it?
I know what it is.
Okay, you know what it is. The main character in the show, Don Draper, works on Madison Avenue in the 50s, which is like the advertisement capital of the United States. It's in New York. And so consumerism and materialism, and Americans returning home from World War II, the GI Bill, like this massive war economy that the United States has. How do you keep the momentum going? You get people to consume stuff. You get people to, you create a sense of insecurity and competition, keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, you want to keep up with your neighbor. Oh, you want to race so you can buy 2 more cars and 1 more house and picket fence and blah, blah, blah. So you think about all the advertising and oh, you need cigarettes. You need every variety of lawnmower and tool if you're a guy, every variety of vacuum cleaner and whatever if you're a housewife at the time. And so a lot of this consumer culture was created by Edward Bernays, who was like the idea after World War II, because the government was freaked out after seeing what happened in Germany and what happened in Russia, how these revolutions basically happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is, if we can, instead of having strong, informed citizens, if we can have weak, docile, passive consumers, then they won't pay attention to, they won't connect bigger things, bigger ideas. They won't become a problem for us. They will, like, we will tell people in a very propaganda way what they should want,
Mm-hmm.
and
How to
use
feel,
advertising
what to do,
campaigns,
how to be
and yeah,
successful.
and use create this very packaged idea of democracy,
Mm.
about mass democracy, where you have mass education and mass media and mass consumer culture, and
Yes.
all these things.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what we want to stray away from, right?
Mhm.
That's what a lot of shows that I'm a fan of in the cyberpunk genre. That's
Mhm.
what their dystopian prediction is of the future, is that, right, you take that idea and it just keeps expanding upon itself until there's only giant, big mega corporations,
Yeah.
mega governments,
Mhm.
right? Because in these realities, there's huge nations. It's not just the United States, like
Sure.
the United States, Canada, Mexico, and all of South America,
Mhm.
and like Eastern and Western Europe.
Sure.
And the cities get bigger, and the corporations get bigger, and the military gets bigger to
Mhm.
all compensate.
Exactly. And I guess what I was trying to say before is, I had started to say, is like, we cannot perceive outside of the box. Most of us can't perceive outside of the box in which we were born into, the circumstances of our moment. And it's almost like there was this book by Kurt Vonnegut where he talks about flatlanders, who are these drawings on a piece of paper. They're people who live on paper, and so they can't perceive the third dimension, because they can only see from their flat view. All they can see is lines. They can only see like one dimensional, or two dimensional, I should say. So they can't perceive of the third dimension. But we're sort of like that in a way, where, like, could hunter gatherers perceive of what agriculture would be? Could people who lived in agriculture perceive of what industry would be? We grew up in an industrial paradigm, so we can't possibly perceive, well, not possibly perceive, but we have a very difficult time perceiving of what the technological phase of humanity will be. And that's why I want it to be a humanistic phase, which is pro-human and pro discovering of self. In the industrial phase encouraged massive institutions, whether it was massive militaries, massive corporations, massive governments that controlled things. We just assume that the next phase is going to be an even more massive thing. We're like, oh, obviously the thing that comes next is world government. No, actually what's probably going to happen is decentralization, where, like, these massive things just basically explode. Like, they just shatter into a million shards. And that's not going to be, in the short term, a fun experience.
No.
But in the longer term, it's going to allow people to live more personalized and meaningful lives, and have these kind of like micro communities.
Yeah, and by studying under this methodology that you want to promote, when the inevitable shattering happens, the people who are most aware and better off of the possibilities can pick up the pieces and build themselves better.
Yes.
It's not build back better globalism style, but build back better yourself, then your community, or no, yourself, your family, the community, state, or heck, microstate. Who knows? It might not even be 50 states. It might be 100 states.
It would be probably way more than 100 states. Like, the globe before nation states was peppered with all these, like, kingdoms and micro states and sovereignties and whatnot.
Right, like Germany. Going back to Germany again,
Sure.
it was during the Roman Empire. It's the Germanic tribes. Germany, I don't even think was, like, united as a country until the 1800s, right? Like, wasn't it just like all these city states mostly, and Germanic tribes? And
Germany as an idea, I think it was Prussia before that, is like a very new thing, as all of these nation states were. Like, people during the era where the church was predominant, I'm talking Europe here, didn't really conceive of what a nation state would be. Just like we look back and we're like, chivalry, that's a pretty ridiculous thing. Like this code that the knights had, they would look at citizenship and be like, that's a ridiculous thing. What does that even mean? You know, we just take it for granted.
Yeah.
So I think it could be very empowering, but people don't realize it yet, in that like you can sort of like pick and choose which things you belong to, which things are meaningful to you. It'll be partly physical, partly digital. The sovereignties will overlap.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like a mix of a whole bunch of different things, because communism and capitalism are these ideas developed during the largely the industrial period to figure out like what to do with labor, what to do with soldiers, what to do with these.
When you say
things.
Industrial period, you mean the Industrial Revolution?
The Industrial Revolution, but it goes like 500 years back. That was like the early industrial phase. And then you have something that's called the kind of like rigidly Industrial Revolution, where it starts with, I don't know, the factories and mechanization and interchangeable parts and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it marks the transition from an agricultural or agrarian society to a factory-based city society. I think that's why they make that distinction. It's when the technology was directly affecting agriculture.
Sure.
I think
you're probably right. And by the way, the agricultural revolution never ended. The industrial revolution never ended. Like, societies get to a certain point where they kind of like go through a gateway or a threshold into the next thing, but like we still have hunter-gatherer groups on this planet, right? So hunter-gatherers never ended. Most of societies are probably agricultural societies, or large portions of them are agricultural. Very few societies are industrial, and even fewer are technological or getting into the technological, right? So like all of these things are kind of like simultaneously happening.
There's still uncontacted tribes in the Amazon, and then I think Papua New Guinea, and then some islands in the Pacific off of India.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's some of those people like that live how the natives lived before, Columbus and all
pretty
that.
Much. Like there are people that just haven't even been contacted at all. It's pretty wild. Okay, so I'll finish this point, and then you just like free reign to do whatever you want, to improvise and to
free range Tom. I like it. Okay.
But so it's almost going to be a mix of like anarchism, communism, capitalism, democracy, like all these different ideas that we only think of in relation to big governments, kind of merge together. So it's going to be anarchy, and that like there's going to be no singular central control or ruler. It's going to be networked, right? So that's the better side of anarchy, where it's not just like, when people think anarchy, they think like everybody just like stabbing each other and
mass chaos, like the purge
style. Everybody trying to like win out over everybody else.
Yeah,
that's not necessarily what anarchy has to be. Anarchy strictly means like there's no central controller or no central entity that like is like, my decisions and my information and my narrative is better than everybody else's. Everybody else must submit to me. So it's going to be anarchic in that way. It's also going to be democratic, but our version of democracy right now makes no sense, because we try to implement it on a mass scale. And democracy only works if you assume that the people engaging in the vote or whatever the topic is are competent in what that topic is, and also have integrity. Like they understand sort of like how the system operates. Yeah, exactly. So does it sound like our system right now? Not really. So when you have smaller decisions that need to be made, you have smaller groups of people that align to make those decisions, and it's more likely that there's going to be competence and integrity in that decision making. So smaller scale democracy. You think about what communism was ultimately trying to do. It was trying to have, like, strictly in Marxist terms, it was like a dictatorship of the proletariat. So like things were communally owned, right? And that's kind of what we're moving into as well. It's like, who owns the internet, right? Nobody owns the internet, but it's this thing that's sort of broadly owned and people contribute to and whatnot. And some people would say that mega corporations on the internet, and there's some truth to that.
Twitter,
and that's what we need
Facebook.
To consider moving into the tech
Amazon.
phase, is how to prevent just giant techno corporations from dominating the next phase of humanity. But so like shared control, that's an aspect of communism that's kind of going to be coming true. And then of course markets, like markets is going to be the aspect of capitalism that's going to be maintained. And people have like a very negative view of capitalism right now, but like at the end of the day, it's people like sharing ideas and trying to make ideas better, just like the natural selection of organisms. This is in the idea and innovation space where people can be like, oh, cool idea. We had this conversation and we're collaborating with each other, but what if we took it this way? And what if we did this? So it's like iterative, you come up with good ideas, and the goal is to have them be towards humanistic ends that help humanity rather than exploit and manipulate people. So that's all I'll say on that.
Okay.
And go at it.
All right. On that note, so going back to the Clubhouse. So I wanted that there was two big ideas or steps that I came up with that I wanted to bring up and broadly and see if people would want to talk about it. But obviously that didn't happen because of technology. But anyway, so the two like big ideas of like decentralization that, and they have to go in this order. So the first big step that I believe needs to happen first is what I call the inward expansion. And that's more on a local level, whether it's
the N-word expansion.
The inward.
Like, oh, getting pretty provocative here.
Getting pretty crazy. Oh my God. Oh man.
Okay. The inward expansion.
Yes, you're too funny. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, looking inward towards yourself. So and that's more self-centered, and it has to do with the internet and technology. And pretty much what needs to happen first is that like use like pretty much to the internet can be like decentralized or connections, and there can pretty much the basic premise I have is being able to connect with people through the internet in a humanistic manner, whether that's through cybernetic connections, or
one mode,
just freely expressing ideas and only the best ideas. But if we can connect technologically wise, I don't want to say singularity because that's too centralized, but essentially if we can understand each other and it can go beyond like the categorical definitions such as race, sex, gender, ethnicity, wealth, etc., then that can be the foundation for the next step, which would be outward expansion. And this would be more physically evident. You would see this, or it's a lot easier to see, obviously, because what I'm referring to is stuff like deep space exploration, like trying to explore other galaxies, documenting exoplanets, discovering potential, planets to go to in the future that can support human life. So
even within probably Earth as well, like deep sea and deep.
Right. Yeah. They say only 5% of the world's oceans have been explored. So that's very alien to us. And that also comes back to the next point, which would be like solar system colonization. Or exploration. So you could call, the colonization of Mars, the moon, or heck, even asteroids, going to the asteroid belt and somehow using this great technology that we developed first, bringing it into a safe orbit, mining it.
That'd be pretty nuts.
And yeah, wouldn't that be great? Like that'd be another great way to, I don't want to say save the planet, but, maintain humans' ability to live on the Earth for as long as possible without, depleting resources.
Vast distances, you have to basically develop intergalactic supply chains. And interplanetary gas stations, so to speak, of whatever the fuel and resources that you need are, rather than just doing trips to and from Earth all the time.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, and that would be, that'd be the next state of exploration too. So, the exploration of the Earth and all the continents is pretty much done, with the exception of the oceans and inhospitable places. But what's next? Well, you got to look outward.
Yeah.
We've already been on the moon. We have probes throughout the solar system, leaving the solar system. So that is what would be next, and that is what I would see happening in the future. And like the great net and the like the looking inward
Sure.
and developing technology in the digital space, that is going to happen first.
Yeah.
And just to get to that,
and in concert with, I think it's almost going to be like maybe not fully separate from it. I think you think you're thinking like linearly, and like this happens, then this happens, then this happens, but a lot of this stuff is just like happening simultaneously, and some of it's before and some of it's after, and it's happening continuously and in like a very like complex
that's true
way.
That's true. I think I'm overly simplifying it, but
you are. I mean, it makes it easier to understand. I mean, ultimately,
the reason I put it that way is that, like, I mean, we have to go beyond borders at some point, or we have to get to the point where, if we leave Earth, we have to, the major powers at the very least need to be working in lockstep with one another. So if we can't get along, outside of one nation just, eradicating another one and doing it themselves, like outside of that, like these issues need to be solved first, which is why,
that's why I don't like another reason I don't like these big entities, these major like nation states like China and the United States and whatever, is because like it takes the worst aspects of maybe the best aspects too, but it tends to amplify the worst aspects as well. So like if humans have a competitiveness to them, then it will take that competitiveness and put it at the national level. So you need like a mortal enemy as an entire nation. Then you end up with these freaking wars in like the nation basically taking science and subverting it for its own interests. Like, we have these chemistry breakthroughs, might as well create these medications and pills to massively medicate the population. We have these biological breakthroughs, we might as well fiddle around with what do you call it, like I'm not implying government created pandemics here, but like biological warfare and whatnot. Same thing with, we had this physics breakthrough, might as well create this bomb. First thing we should do with it, create a freaking bomb that could blow each other up. So
exactly. What's more powerful than a nuclear bomb?
That's why centralized entities with like highly fallible individuals, because all humans are fallible, like we're all prone to mistakes and prejudices and errors. Like you're literally setting up humanity for massive disaster when you concentrate all these levers of power and then you put an individual at the helm of it. Like you need to break that shit up, and therefore, like if you have like micro sovereignties and in smaller communities and whatnot, when people make mistakes, it's not like world-ending mistakes. So enough said.
It's like like your town gets like dissolved or taken over by another town to run it or whatnot. But another thing I want to add with like the great net is obviously like the development of AI and artificial intelligence. So that would go along with like this first step, the imminently developing technology and building understanding, and we can, and I think the development of AI and AI technology and them being able to do a lot of the work that we can't do would be a good way to de-escalate certain tensions. And because I mean, I think people would be more apt to explore their real interests and use the internet as a way to develop themselves better, and to look at or to just like explore or think deeply. People just don't have time. Like the 9-to-5 work week, and most people work 40 plus hours a week, or it doesn't
destroyed.
And I think that's a big factor in the polarization that not a lot of people are talking about, is people's lives are so busy and so hectic that they barely have time for any of this. So they just look at the lowest common denominator entertainment. Like they only have like a hour or a couple hours of free time. So they just like, what do? They go on YouTube and, I like cats, I like dogs, let's look at that. And then when hours later or something comes up, you have to deal with the kids, you have to go to this event. I think, the ability for people to think has been standardized and bogged down in such a way.
It's
I mean,
it's
almost
terrible. Yeah, you're right.
it's so I think that would be huge with the AI development. Yeah, then, like the truckers or certain industries,
Mhm.
cry foul and be like, hey, it's taking away our jobs. But if we can, have like universal basic income or new ways to pay people
Mhm.
to spend their time, then the initial concerns and people's fears can be mitigated. So that's
Hugely.
another big step that needs to happen first too, is freeing up people's time and promoting maybe technological humanism
Mhm.
or philosophies of self-improvement,
Sure.
um, self-discovery, researching or doing what you love, either for yourself or for the community, like promoting expansion of, instead of, yeah, promoting the expansion of the self or the mind.
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, like,
Seeing
is it
opportunity there.
true? Yeah, like we are doing the outward expansion of, you know, when it comes to exploration
Mhm.
and resources, and it is, concurrent with each other, both of these. But in order for us to really, really explore and get off this rock and ensure the survival of humanity in the
Get off
long
this
term. I know
rock.
this is really, really far thinking.
Uh-huh.
I'm more of a long-term thinker. Like I
Sure.
kind of
Yeah, yeah, me
miss,
too.
that's kind of a flaw in the way I think. Like I
Big
miss,
picture. No, it's not a flaw, actually. I mean, it's only a flaw when you're in a constrained environment that's like, we need you to think about how to fill out the spreadsheet. We don't need you to think big.
yeah.
And that's the situations that people find themselves in. I mean, you're right to criticize the work environments that people find
Right. And
themselves in.
even, yeah, I mean, you're pointing out like, even, I'm not as free as you, let's say, schedule wise. So like, yeah, like
Oh,
it's,
I'm more constrained right now at the moment. I'm
oh,
working a
you
nine
are.
to five, and I resent the 9 to 5, but like
Oh, you
until
are. Okay.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
until and I'm doing stuff on the side too, but until we
Hmm.
develop
Okay.
uh you know methods and systems and ideas that allow people
Yeah.
to break away from that more broadly,
Because
then
heck,
then
like,
we're all just going to be trying to understandably figure out like, how do like, I have these ideas, but I still have to feed myself, I still have to pay
yeah,
for things,
I
right?
just like thinking about these ideas and these
Mhm.
shower thoughts. And like one that I've always had
Damn, these are
going,
big shower thoughts.
yeah, it's just a,
I know what you mean, but
yeah. Um, but like, even going back to when I like got my first job after college, like
mhm,
one of the things that was brought up like 4 or 5 years ago was and it's still talked about, was the minimum wage increase.
mhm.
But I was thinking like, like what if instead of minimum wage, what if I don't know, like just take one day off the work week. Like let's start with that. Like
People are
let's
talking
do
about that,
a
even two
Monday. Yeah, so I thought let's start
potentially.
with this. Let's do a Monday to Thursday work week.
Mhm,
If you still want to keep it 40 hours
mhm.
to not mess up the payroll, fine. Just increase from 8 to 10 hours a day
Yeah,
of work, and it's still 40 hours. And yeah, you may need to change the hourly rate or not at all, depending on um, like how the company does it,
mhm.
but that frees up, instead of a 2-day weekend, it's a 3-day weekend,
Yeah,
and it's more time,
to do shit
right?
that matters to you,
That, yeah,
and
to
to
do
think
stuff
about
that
stuff that's
you love, or it just gives you more time to, I don't know, maybe use the internet for research
sure.
or learning something, learning a new skill.
People, there are going to, like, don't get me wrong, there are going to, as people start to develop their ability to use free time well, there's going to be a lot of people, and we're already seeing this, a lot of people who misuse time. And you're right to like, there is a ton of time wasting, and people, and I guess that's kind of relative to what you're like, who am I to call someone's what they're using their time for wasted?
Right.
I
Everybody
understand
has
that.
different
I
goals in
understand that
life. Yeah,
argument,
yeah.
but like, there's
Hmm.
a lot of just like pissing time away watching, like you were saying before, you cat videos or whatever, or endless streaming of Netflix or
Yeah.
whatever.
And
And
don't you feel that social pressure? I hate to break your thumb,
sure,
but don't you feel that social pressure? Like, when you talk to your friends and like, let's say like WandaVision, that was like the big show and
uh
everyone's talking about it and watching it. And I don't really like, I just like to, maybe it's because I'm an introvert
mhm.
and because, I was raised a twin and I just, needed to have my own like time and space because,
Sure.
sharing everything. But when I come home from work,
Mhm.
let's say, and like get in, have like the 3-4 hours before going to bed, I like to just decompress.
Sure.
And instead of watching a show out in the living room,
Uh-huh.
just watch whatever I want. Like
Yeah.
that's what I love about the internet, is that, and say what you
Individualize.
will about YouTube and all the censorship, but I mean, hey, like there's a hell of a lot more channels on YouTube than the
Yeah.
TV. Like there's no longer the, and like, it's,
You're right.
we grew up with cable, so we were kind of constrained with like, oh, channels 1 to 97.
Mhm.
And then, streaming's a thing, but like I just like the idea of using the internet for whatever I want to explore. But don't you feel that social pressure of like, if you don't watch it or watch like the certain shows, like people almost don't.
You become you become foreign, and you kind of can alienate
Right.
yourself if you don't speak the common language of watching like the basic what's popular, right?
Yeah.
I'm okay dealing with that, just because like I've generally just gone with like I think, as you can tell, pretty individualistic, and
Yeah.
so like I
Jen, just look at your truck in this room, for Christ's sake.
I tend to go for what's interesting rather than what's popular. Like I find what's popular generally to be very boring.
Yeah.
And there not to be often much depth to it. So you are right that it's very interesting how there's just like infinite channels now that people can tune into.
Yeah.
So it does
kind
of pull people away from a shared reality and a shared narrative, which can be bad if we just don't think about that and let it go. Like everybody, you think about the experiences in the past when there was 3 channels, like everybody was basically watching Walter Cronkite. Everybody was, I don't know, watching the sitcom Cheers or whatever. And so like people could get together and everybody like, oh, do you see Cheers last night? Of course I saw Cheers last night. Now there's like people within the same family are watching like, 5 different things at the same time. So it does break people away from a common core of shared experience. But that's why I think we need to focus so much on making the real world not so miserable that everybody feels like they have to escape from it. Like here's the thing about these big entities like governments, is that they take, it's not just about controlling resources, it's partly about that, or controlling people's lives. It's about literally controlling the narrative, controlling the way that they view the world. Like the United States is how the lens you must view the world through, or just like the church as a big entity is the lens you must view the world through. And these entities are different from the value systems at their base. Like the church is not the Bible. The United States is not the Constitution. Like all these existing, the church became a very corrupt thing, like hugely corrupt.
Yeah, or like the Democratic Party is not CNN or MSNBC, and the Republican Party is not Fox. Like
those are all corrupt things, but like it's more like the Republican Party is not the Republican Party is not the Constitutional Convention and the original founding value system,
or the Federalists,
and the Democratic Party is not the I don't even know what they're.
I don't even know what you want. I don't even know what they call the Democratic Party. It's fractured in so many different ways.
Both the Republican and Democratic parties are, but so the point is more that like we need to. We're kind of coming upon a point where we need to perceive in an entirely new way. And what was the topic that brought us into this? I'm trying to.
The topic?
Yeah, you were just talking before about, I'm kind of losing my train of thought.
Well, I was talking about how like there's that societal pressure.
Oh, okay.
And it tends to be unintentional by the people who talk about it.
Okay.
Like I was talking about specific new TV shows like WandaVision. So you can kind of binge watch that or faster, and that's a lot of the popular shows.
Okay. I remember
that are streamed. Yeah, like they talk about it, and you're like, oh, I just kind of watch whatever I want.
I get what you're saying. Okay, so the point that I was making before is that like these big institutions control the narrative in like mass media, mass entertainment, mass education were ways to basically like make sure that everybody like saw things basically through the same lens.
Yeah.
And now that's breaking apart, and
Mhm.
the internet is allowing people to question things, just like the printing press allowed people to question the
Yeah.
church, right? Like, wait a
Mhm.
second, the Bible doesn't say this. You lied to us, you
Yeah.
weird priest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then that's
Uh-huh.
fascinating because like what's not helping too is that the like the media or like big tech
Mhm.
in the internet and the big like media, like they're seeing that
Yeah.
like the fracture, and then they're trying to demonize and try to rope, like they're trying to rope people back in,
Exactly.
but they're
But it's not working.
unintentionally, it's not working. They're unintentionally causing more division.
It's like, it's also
Yeah.
like the Streisand effect too, where they're like, don't look at that, and people are like, well, no, I'm going to look at that.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, and it's also like a pure, and then you see the rise of certain ideas that create a purity death spiral.
Mhm.
A lot of people call it that.
Sure.
Like,
yeah. In these purges, right? Like,
Yeah.
we need to cut this. Those people aren't pure
Yeah,
enough.
what do you think
now.
cancel culture is?
Yeah,
It's a purity death spiral.
it is a purity death spiral. Yeah, there's.
And now that Trump's out of the way, like there's certain leftists that are being canceled. So
Exactly.
it's not.
So we need to make
It's
sure that
not
there's
a-
something that
yeah.
isn't like forcing people to. It's not force feeding people a narrative of you must view the world this way, but it's giving people enough of a system or a set of ideas where we're saying, like, here are the principles, here's this networked system where you can basically believe what you want to believe, but the basis of it is like, we're not trying to impose on other people in this massive way.
Yeah.
And we need to have that lifeboat, or that thing that other people can switch over into, because then they'll start to believe in it, and then they'll, like, it starts to become a self-fulfilling prophecy where
Mhm.
it's not telling people, once again, exactly what to believe, but it's just saying, like, here's a framework where, like, we don't all have to believe the exact same things, and we can still cooperate with each other and create, like, really crazy cool humanistic things.
Yeah.
And if we don't think about that, if we just ignore it, and we get freaked out by this change and this newness, then what's going to happen is everybody's just going to, like, basically commit to escapism from this chaos. Like, everybody's going to go into their own reality,
Yeah.
and go into virtual reality, or go into their own YouTube. You've heard about these bubbles, these
Echo chamber.
echo chambers that people
Yes.
put themselves in. People have the capacity to do that.
Mhm.
So the same thing that is causing that is also causing people, is also allowing curious people to seek entirely new information and contradictory information, and broaden their views and understand themselves, while other people are just basically using this freedom of choice to build a bubble or build an echo chamber around themselves.
Mhm.
So there's always going to be people who misuse the new tools or the new situations, just like when welfare was, the war on poverty was put in place in the 60s. There are some people who used the welfare for things that they needed. Other people were just like, I'm just going to buy lottery tickets and booze, right?
Right.
So I
Yeah.
try to make a mix of points at once. It's not necessarily a clean point that I was making there, but
No, but I will say that, I mean, the 2020s, I mean, they're going to be the roaring 20s, but not in
Yeah.
a good sense. But I think
like impending collapse, that sense.
Yeah, like that sense. And on that note, I have I found an interesting little it was like a chart with stages of decentralization, and it was a good way to encapsulate
Sure.
what may happen or what direction might be positive.
It looked like it looked like a really cool chart.
Yeah, I don't know how much you want me to read this. I mean, I was only going to go up to the first stage because we are at the first stage. So there's two things. So the first is the pre-stage, and I would argue that the pre-stage was like 10 years ago, like the early 2010s. So what you saw was the creation of decentralized and censorship resistant currencies, like a Bitcoin.
Sure.
And that was
small at the time, but it was still
small at the time, but it was created like a little over 10 years ago. And then also designing and exploring the decentralism as a concept and ideology. So
sure,
it was just, it was an idea at the time that was breeding.
I don't know what circles it was talked about in. I'm sure decentralized circles, but the first book that I read about it was called The Sovereign Individual, and I think it was written back in the mid 90s. So it started even earlier than that, but it was a fringe thing, and then it starts to grow.
And I think with the the 90s. So when was the internet officially available? Like 1993. So like that makes sense to me in my timeline. But now I believe we're in stage one, which is banks, corporations, retail, and institutions adopt cryptocurrency.
Mhm.
And you're seeing that with Elon Musk, Tesla,
Sure.
investing in cryptocurrency, and then other organizations are following suit with other cryptocurrencies.
And the
Uh,
counter response, by the way, is the big institutions like the government. I heard recently that the IRS was, I think it was the IRS, was basically paying people potential like $1 million reward or some large reward for if they found ways to hack into cryptocurrencies and
oh,
or
really?
track
Yeah.
crypto payments or something like that.
Of course, yeah.
So they don't like this loss of power.
The banks, no, yeah, no, they want everything to be centralized and
Mhm.
controlled through them. But yeah, I think yeah, uh, Elon Musk, he's being investigated by or sued by the SEC,
Uh-huh.
which yeah, for like I don't know if it's corruption or influence, but there's like this meme coin called Dogecoin,
Yeah.
and you know that Shiba
I always wondered
Inu.
how to say that. It's
Yeah,
Doge.
Doge.
Okay.
Yeah, Doge. Um, and yeah, it's based on that Shiba Inu meme.
Okay. Yep.
Um, I wish I had a picture. Maybe one day you'll have a green screen, Pat, and we could have pictures in the background as
I
for people
know.
to
I'm
see.
pretty low tech considering I talk about tech stuff.
I know, right? Come on, get with it. No, but but yeah. So just from his tweeting, so he like a lot of people are starting to buy Dogecoin.
Uh-huh.
And it spikes when he tweets about it. So now they're trying to get him on corruption. But
Oh
anyway,
yeah.
yeah, I don't think they'll win. And he's like the richest man in the world. So good luck
Oh
with
man.
that. But just the fact that they're going after him
Mhm.
just because he's tweeting memes about a currency that may or may not, become as successful as Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Uh, and then anyway, so next down on stage one is advocating tech that is decentralized, censorship resistant, and open source to groups, institutions, schools, and governments alike. Also pushing for better digital rights, i.e. fair use, privacy, and the right to repair.
Sure.
So pretty much, and you're seeing that too in terms of alt tech platforms.
Mhm.
So you're seeing that right now with their alternatives to anything, like there's alternatives to social media like
Mhm.
Parler or Gab.ai. There's alternatives to YouTube.
Mhm.
The big one is BitChute that people are transitioning to. Um, and then lastly, it says in stage one, initiating a move to Web 3.0 and pushing against legacy media platforms like Google, Facebook, Medium, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Google Chrome, Twitch, etc.
Mm.
So that is where we are in this chart is stage one, because you're starting to see cryptocurrencies being used more because of the poor economy and
Sure.
corporations and
This is six stage chart, so it's pretty comprehensive. And
yeah, 5-stage chart. I
oh, it's
misspoke.
five. Okay.
Five
Still,
stage chart, but yeah, just the fact that we're supposedly in stage one of this, I
it's
found
crazy. Yeah, I
really
mean, it shows
fascinating.
it's a long process, and it should. But the thing that I like is that it puts in perspective what's going on. It gives you a sense of, oh, okay, it's not just random chaos. There's something. I mean, it is chaotic, but it shows you, oh, okay, this makes sense. It puts things in perspective.
Yeah, yeah, and I wanted to. I'll let you keep this and read this yourself because I know you're an avid reader, and
Sure,
who knows,
thank you.
maybe you
That's
can.
actually a really cool
Maybe you could
chart.
post something on Instagram or something
Sure.
based upon that. Um, but anyway, so what I want to bookend that stage one because it talked about cryptocurrencies,
Mhm.
and I am big into cryptocurrencies now. I've done some research,
Mm.
and it's gaining speed. Obviously, Bitcoin is above $60,000 now per Bitcoin.
So what was it when you bought? Do you remember?
When I bought $1,000 worth of
Uh,
Bitcoin, and I bought it at 32,000,
when
and
wow,
that was back in
that's pretty
January.
that's pretty cool, actually.
So in 2 months, it's essentially doubled in 2 months.
It can be volatile for sure. It
It is
has the
volatile.
history is very volatile, actually. It'll be
Hmm.
like 2,000, 4,000,
Yeah, there was a
8,000,
crash in
4,000.
2017 or 2018
Mhm.
actually, and the price like a year ago, like today,
Mhm.
I saw a tweet that Bitcoin was like $3,000 per Bitcoin,
Mm.
like a year ago today.
Yeah.
So this is also a very recent climb. Like Bitcoin didn't start to accelerate until the fall, like
Mhm.
September, October, around election times when it really started to skyrocket from like 3,000 to 5,000,
Oh yeah,
10,000.
I know. People are exploring it now, and I think it's a cool thing. My criticisms and concern with Bitcoin is that first of all, like the blockchain, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin space in general, like I really think blockchain is fundamental to decentralization.
Hmm.
But when I try to find people who talk about it seriously, it is very difficult to get through the outer cloud of scammers and people who are trying to basically like sell people. There's so many
Right,
scam
right. It's
people. And
scary,
it's not to
but
say that Bitcoin itself is a scam, but everybody's trying, like, there are all these hype people, all these
hmm
technologies. They're the people who understand where the technology is at and what the technology's potential is. And then there's all these people who kind of like say, I'm an expert, and maybe I'm on the fringe, I'm not claiming I'm an expert, but maybe I'm kind of on the fringes of that where, you know, I'm not trying to tell people to buy shit. I'm not trying to,
hmm
but like, yeah, it's very difficult to get people who aren't just trying to pitch you on Bitcoin.
Yeah, and of course, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. It's just an opinion. I think this is a great example of the decentralization process happening
Mhm.
and giving more power back to individuals.
Mhm.
And I just want to highlight this. But Pat, you sound like pretty skeptical. Do you want to learn more? Do you want to learn more?
I do.
You do? Okay. So pretty much, so cryptocurrencies, they're essentially a peer-to-peer or bank-free method used to transfer wealth or
Mhm.
ownership of any other commodities without the need of a third party,
Okay,
right? So like a
I
bank
get
or
that.
a credit union.
That's
Yeah, so this
important.
technology also has the potential, I think, to revolutionize how information is gathered too.
Mhm.
So like, public registries, libraries, and other database systems.
Mhm.
So right now, what most people are familiar with is centralized currency, and that is represented in physical currency,
Yeah,
right? So we all know what paper bills
paper
are:
notes,
coins, bank
which used
transfers,
to
credit
be
cards,
metal, used to be precious metals, and then when we went off the gold standard,
right?
and now it's just paper.
Yeah, so pretty much, yeah, it's the value of money in your pocket.
Mhm.
However, like the value of it though is it's always controlled by a central bank
Mhm.
or credit union,
Mhm.
and they may not be acting in your best interests,
Sure.
and it's definitely affected by the economy or the stock
It's
market.
kind of a
So
black box, right? Like
pretty much,
in
yeah, it's a risk.
an airplane, the thing that has the recordings is called the black
Hmm.
box, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
basically you can't see what's going on within it. So they keep the ledger. The bank keeps the ledger of all the transactions. So you just kind of have to assume that they have integrity, right? That they're not cooking their
yeah, that
books
they
or
can just
whatever.
create $1.9 trillion out of thin air like that.
Well, that's a different thing. So like
Yeah.
in the United States, it's a good point though, is like one of the big reasons, and I know you know this, but I'm just kind of putting this out there. One of the reasons why people advocate for it is our dollar is called a fiat currency, right?
Yes.
So it's like our Federal Reserve is our major bank here, and they can just effectively print money out of
Hmm.
thin air.
Yeah.
They don't have to mine precious metals, which are like they have more value because they're rare. They can just keep flooding more paper. They just keep printing, keep
Yeah.
printing, keep
Yeah.
printing.
That's why there's a meme called "haha money printer go brr,"
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's just
exactly. And it's just pumping out money, and when you're not like raising taxes to pay for things, you
right.
can
And
just
there's a real risk of hyperinflation.
Mhm.
I mean, I think the only reason we haven't really seen it is because the stock market has been doing so well
Mhm.
generally. I know it went into a bear market for like a month or so, but now it's starting to go back up, and the people just got their stimulus check
Mhm.
this weekend. So that is going to affect the stock market in a positive way.
Sure.
I would expect it to go up, just because there's a lot more a lot more retail investors,
Mhm.
i.e., like individuals who can just download apps,
Sure.
an investor app, and put it in. So that's why I don't think you're seeing the hyperinflation. But if you go to some grocery stores, you're already seeing an increase in food prices,
Sure.
and there's also an increase in gas. They're predicting that the price of gas is going to go reach around $3 by April.
Oh, here we go again.
I know.
I was enjoying the $2 gas with the the
Yeah, the dollar
fracking.
95. Yeah,
The yeah
yeah. Now the
the
Keystone Pipeline is gone thanks to a new administration. But anyway, so
One quick thing
yeah.
on inflation is
Mhm.
that I think people don't really in general understand inflation, and it's basically the when you increase the amount of currency in the economy, then relative to the amount of goods and services that are available, then you devalue the currency. So if you have life savings in a bank account,
Yeah.
then effectively what you have saved away is now worth far less as more
Yeah.
money gets put into circulation, and it's
Yeah.
like an indirect tax on people.
Yeah, and that's the fear of having a savings account in a bank.
Mhm.
If there's inflation, like what good is your savings if after 10 years the value gets cut in half
Yeah.
even? So like let's say you put $10,000 in
Mhm.
with the expectation that it'd be worth more. Well, now it's just cut in half and you have essentially $5,000.
Exactly. And
It
you get people trying to compensate for that and predict for it by basically, instead of putting their money into interest bearing accounts, by investing in riskier investments, which is speculative, and then
mm,
the economy becomes way more volatile and all that shit. But one other note, deflation.
mhm.
Interestingly, technology as it gets implemented is deflationary because you're able to produce goods and services far cheaper and far more easily. Like,
Oh, good. Yeah.
if you have like 3D printing,
Mm,
where you can just, a manufacturing company can just on site print its parts rather than having to have a global supply chain where they have their part made in China where the labor is
mhm.
cheaper, the cost is cheaper, and then have it shipped across the globe where they have to have a sea network and a giant naval protective force protecting the sea lanes, all that
Yeah.
has costs associated with it, and it gets
Mhm.
baked into the end cost. But if you can just make shit on site, then
Yeah.
it deflates the
Mhm.
currency.
That's why,
You
yeah, I
can
mean,
buy far more.
that's why I think like the populists have a good point. Like if more things are made in the USA, more industries brought back, you will
Mhm.
naturally get deflation over time,
It,
right?
it um,
Or am I simplifying that too much? Because you don't really, to be honest, like I don't hear a lot of deflation talk. It's always inflation. So
yeah.
I have a better understanding of what causes inflation and why, but not so
There's different mechanisms because, like, if the cost of having the things made by like slave labor over in China or someplace else is ultimately less than the cost of shipping it across the globe,
mm,
then then that is theoretically a better setup. But I guess it's more that technology has the capacity to make things far cheaper without having to like exploit people. That's
okay.
kind of the benefit of the deflationary effect, and like the artificial protectionism of just like holding stuff in the United States if it's better made someplace else that has the resources nearby or
Okay.
something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting, but a conversation for another day,
Yeah.
right? But anyway, so yeah, I mean, this is no way financial advice,
Mhm.
but because of all those reasons, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have savings accounts,
Mhm.
and you don't even have to. Well, I'll get into that later, but I mean, there are definitely some benefits though of this like new technology, and I'm sure it will improve over time as more people understand it and
Mhm.
have confidence. Because what is the stock market? Why does the stock market rise in certain stocks? Because of confidence.
Mhm.
Anyway, so
Sometimes often false confidence.
false confidence, but hey, I mean, if you're an investor, you can if you can make your money though, you
Mhm.
can buy the dip when people are being falsely negative,
Mhm.
when it has more value, and then you can sell off when it's being falsely promoted.
Yes, or you can shut down
So
Robinhood.
that's a skill. Yeah. Game stocks. uh, but anyway, so yeah, so decentralized currency, so essentially um what it is. So its value is represented by the currency's coin,
Mhm.
like a Bitcoin, a Litecoin, Dogecoin,
Mhm.
which is basically an encrypted piece of computer code that is difficult to reproduce but easy to verify
Sure.
using two keys. And these two keys are a public key and a private key. And the public key is
Is the
what
encryption the hash function? Do you remember? Like, have you heard the term hash function
hash
before?
function.
I think it's basically like, never mind it. I shouldn't have brought that up, but I think
Yeah,
it's how they encrypt, and it makes it difficult.
right. I'm not a coder, so
Neither am
I'm
I.
just,
That's why.
this is all, yeah,
Yeah.
these are good questions. Maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody in your friend group or
If I
bubble,
can find that person who knows about this without trying to
that would be
get me to
very,
buy
very,
Bitcoin.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone who's a lot more knowledgeable about the specifics than I am. But anyway, so there's two keys, like a public key and a private key. The public key anchors it to the hosting blockchain.
Mhm.
Okay. And the private key infers ownership that is held in the coin owner's wallet.
Yep.
So that is, so you were talking about all these scammers. Well, there's two ways you can own crypto. One way is to go on a legit, a wallet company, or
Mhm.
a good example is Coinbank.
Yep.
That's a crypto wallet that you can, or web service that you can uh, buy cryptocurrency on, and it stays there. Or you don't have to own the coin necessarily. You can go through a third party like Robinhood. So
Sure.
Robinhood, you can buy cryptocurrency, but you don't own, like, let's say you buy one Bitcoin, you don't own that Bitcoin. It's
Mhm.
owned by Robinhood on
Yeah.
your behalf, almost like a stock.
This is where I don't get, and
But they're
I'm
not
not pressing you
stocks.
for an answer. I'm not pressing you for an answer here, but this is where I don't get. They're talking about how some banks are like using blockchain now, or using cryptocurrencies, and various institutions are decentralizing, and I'm kind of like, if banks are using cryptocurrencies, then hasn't the entire purpose of the cryptocurrency been undermined? Like, I thought the whole purpose of it was to not have a financial intermediary or some controlling element there.
Well, I think so. The banks, they can't. I mean, the banks need to buy their own crypto wallets through these
Okay.
companies, so they're not buying
Okay.
the company. I mean, who knows? Maybe one day you'll see like Bank of America wallet.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if banks were smart, I could see banks creating their own crypto, like separate crypto industry or crypto people,
Uh-huh.
where they have their own crypto wallets. So like, oh, like here's a promotion, like if you open this account, you get, I don't know, such and such, percent of a coin
Sure.
if you buy our crypto wallet. So that could be a possibility. But as of right now,
Okay.
I would say it's mostly decentralized. Now, the benefits to this type of currency is it insulates customers from bank failures and collapses,
Mhm.
like a 2008, housing collapse. Payments are borderless, since everything can be transferred via the internet. So that's the amazing part, is that it's literally, there's no third party. Like, if you both have a Coinbase account, you can just think of it like a Venmo in a way. You just transfer money for,
Sure.
freely in the
Peer to
represent.
peer.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it doesn't just have to be one coin. If it's something like really, really weak, like a Dogecoin, which is only worth like 6 cents per coin, then yeah, you could exchange coins, but you can exchange, percentages
Sure.
of coins. Like, for example, I only have like 3% of a Bitcoin from when I bought it.
And this is because, and I'm not sure if you're going to go into this, but this is because the total number of Bitcoins that are eventually released through what's called mining, which is like using really complex, energy intensive,
A lot of solar panels.
yeah, energy intensive coding to basically create new coins, or the coins get awarded to the people who contribute their computation power. The coins, there's only going to be a certain number of Bitcoins ever. There's like a
Yeah, there is a
maximum number,
market
and
cap.
like
There
event, like
is,
I think every like 5 years, maybe some percentage number is added. But the point is, they can't just keep reproducing Bitcoins like the bank can keep printing money. That's like the goal of keeping that value down. And that's why ultimately, if there's going to be like, I don't know, 1 million Bitcoins altogether, you have to have people be able to trade portions of Bitcoins. Otherwise, you're only going to be able to have a million or less people. That it's just a very small market.
Right. It's only gonna, only like the rich people who can afford $60,000 for a coin can. Yeah. But yeah, there is a market cap to some of these cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. I don't know what it is, but, or the exact number, but right.
Sure.
Yeah, you definitely have to mine and create more miners and to create more Bitcoin. per se.
I'm
But
hoping this fuels the energy revolution too, of trying to find cheaper, cleaner energy,
yeah,
because it's like it is energy
and
intensive to
like
mine.
people, like these companies, they try to denounce all this and they say, oh, it's bad for the environment, but it's
Uh-huh.
actually gold mining is worse for the environment than Bitcoin mining,
Sure.
just so you guys know. So
And printing freaking rainforests full of or forests of money all the
yeah.
time, which eventually goes to fund products and projects that are terrible for the environment anyway,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
indirectly and
There's a lot of
directly bad for
problems.
the environment.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems. So you can't just put it all on cryptocurrency. And then another couple benefits, like they're immune to deflation and inflation. So
Mhm.
that's one of the best aspects of it. And the only requirement to use them is the ability to obtain and use a crypto wallet. That's all. Like if you just have enough access to the internet
Mhm.
and enough money and an email, you can become a crypto owner.
That's pretty freaking cool.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And now to get back to blockchain. So um, this is a really fascinating cryptocurrency slash blockchain. It's called Ethereum. Have you ever heard of
I have
Ethereum?
heard of it. And by the way,
Okay.
I don't know if
Hmm.
we explained blockchain, but it's
Yeah.
basically the theory that underlies cryptocurrencies. So
Yes.
I heard basically like the internet is the foundation of websites like Google or and anything that any
Anything you
website that
type
we
in.
go
Yeah.
on, just as blockchain is the foundation of Bitcoin and
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies, and it can be used for many other things. But
Yes.
okay.
Right. So Ethereum. So I'm actually like the most bullish on this.
Mhm.
Next, I think this will be the next big um, competitor to Bitcoin, and they do call it like the silver to Bitcoin's gold.
Uh-huh.
And essentially, so what it is, it's a technology that lets you send cryptocurrency to anybody for a small fee, and they call these gas fees.
Mm.
So if you go on Twitter, and you hear people complain about, oh, the gas fee's too expensive. No, it's not real gasoline. It's just the fee of being able to send a
Sure.
cryptocurrency to somebody.
And it
And
sustains the system because you
yes,
need to be able to support the system, particularly when it's decentralized, right? If there's
yes,
no taxes, then
yeah,
how
you
do
need
you?
to pay
Yeah,
in order to keep it going. And pretty much it also powers and Ethereum also powers applications that everyone can use and no one can take down.
that's actually pretty cool. And by the way, I was thinking, because I know that there's what is it called? The fee, like a mining fee or
A
something?
gas fee.
Oh, it's called a gas fee.
Hmm.
I was thinking if in a decentralized world, because all the talks of universal basic income so far, which by the way, for those who are unfamiliar with it, look it up. But it's basically like a dividend that everybody gets, so that as jobs become automated, people have basic income that they can support themselves
Hmm.
with. And it's condition free income. It's not like welfare, but basically all the talk about UBI that I've heard so far has been, how can the government make this happen? But in a decentralized world, there's going to be no big government to make it happen, right?
No,
So
or
it
no
can't be a
big
centralized
banks.
program. So
Yeah.
what if one of the ways that we paid for UBI is an additional fee on Bitcoin transactions or cyber currency?
Yeah.
Like I was thinking
Hmm.
three forms of funding. A fee on cyber currency transactions. I don't know if
Hmm.
it's like 10% or something like that. That
Yeah.
might be too
Yeah.
large,
Yeah.
but
And you see that with gas fees.
yep.
Yep.
So add an additional fee onto
Hmm.
that
Okay.
for to fund UBI. Um, Income generating content on platforms like YouTube or whatever. Put a I don't know 10% fee on that,
Hmm.
or you call it a tax, but when I
Yeah.
say tax, I think
Tax all
about
those
big
YouTubers.
governments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the third thing would be the gig economy slash people doing consulting, a 10% gig slash consulting fee. So
Mm.
take the income from the platforms, the income from the cryptocurrency fees, and the
Mm.
income from the gig slash consulting economy, pool all that together, divide it by the population,
Mm.
and then you have everybody having a wallet or something. Maybe they can receive this in cryptocurrency.
Hmm.
And every month, maybe they can change how frequently they get it based on what they need. Maybe they
Mm.
want it delivered like daily, maybe, but
Daily, weekly,
each person can
bi-weekly.
set
Yeah.
how,
Hmm.
like what proportion, how frequently they want to get their payment from their allotment of crypto, right?
Hmm.
But I was thinking that having a UBI that was floating rather than a set amount, like $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever,
Hmm.
like you would constantly have to adjust that with inflation or whatever. But if you had a UBI that was directly connected to the value generation in the economy, in the digital slash real world economy, then
Yeah.
it would float up and down, and it would align people's incentives to want other people to succeed and to want other people. It would basically get rid of this class warfare where with taxation, people without much money are like, well, tax the rich. And then the
Yeah.
rich now have a greater, they're like, well, why should I innovate as much if most of it's just going to be taken away?
Mhm. Yeah.
Now the people who have innovative ideas, they can maximize the potential that they might get from that, and then they can reinvest it. And then the people on the UBI end, the low earners, are also like, yeah, I want that person's ideas to succeed, because then I also get
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
better stake of it, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. The UBI goes up. Yeah.
mhm.
And that goes back to the time argument where, like, instead of 9 to 5 or like 40 to 60 hour, depending on what you got to do, like if people have more free time, like freed up, like for innovation,
Mhm.
you know, or
Sure.
more incentives, just,
Even people who aren't that innovative, they'll
yeah.
just be tinkering around. Maybe they start a garden and they go, oh, I came up with a great gardening
Yeah.
technique or something. It doesn't have to always be a product or
Yeah,
a
yeah, you can
service,
create
but
groups, like they can be,
mhm.
more groups, like form like a group. So like, maybe you're not like a mad scientist genius that can
Mhm.
do it all on your own. Maybe you have a group for, I don't know, how to efficiently, uh, urban garden,
Yep.
how to, whatever. And eventually those groups can interconnect and lead to small
Hell
innovations
yeah.
or large. It just
In
depends
really
on,
fascinating ways too.
yeah.
And you can also pool your incomes and buy something or invest in something, or you create a community center or something like that. But I was thinking that
Yeah.
what if in addition with the UBI,
Yeah.
you had so you send every month or week or whatever people individually want their UBI payment to be. What if with every payment that's made to their wallet, 10% is put into a separate account for them, and that 10% must mandatorily be invested in any number of domains, whether it's like artificial intelligence or bioengineering or like all of
Okay,
these
it's not invested in
all
a stock, it's invested in technology that
it,
can improve.
it's invested in almost like a portfolio. So like
Mm,
artificial intelligence would be like a portfolio of
mhm.
any number of initiatives, private initiatives and companies and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, if you had sort of like a mandatory investment quantity, maybe 10% of each UBI payment, then people would start to pay attention to like to these things, and
Yeah, what it's going
they would
into.
start to
Yeah.
engage more, and then they would start to feel like, oh, like I actually have a stake here, and I would like to learn more about these things. And it engages people because it encourages them to invest. They start to learn about investment and what that means. And
Or it could get like, or like, they're like, oh wait, so that's what part of my money. Okay, maybe that's interesting. Maybe I should go into that field
exactly,
and then make money that way.
exactly. And they can, through wise investment, they can directly benefit from that portion of their investment. And I don't know exactly how would be moderated, but I was thinking who the people, or the way that portfolio of options under artificial intelligence or bioengineering or deep space exploration or
Mhm.
whatever, the people who choose which initiatives and which companies and which ideas go under that portfolio for investing
Yeah.
could be like a commission, or not a commission, a committee of scientists or industry leaders who know about these various things and who can like
Okay.
be like, oh, we should put this and this and this, and people should be able to invest in these. I don't know how it would be managed, but I think it would
Yeah.
be, it could be really freaking cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the potential is definitely there.
Mhm.
We just have to survive this becoming volatility, but I think we will.
it
I think we
will
will.
it will feed into itself, like
Mm.
as banks start to fail,
Hmm.
people will start to put more of their interest and their money into like
Yeah.
Bitcoin, right?
Hmm.
And then that will make Bitcoin stronger, and then that will make more money inaccessible and less taxable,
Hmm.
and then that will cause institutions that currently exist to further degenerate and fall apart.
Hmm.
And more people will like fewer jobs will cause more people to look for gigs,
Yeah.
which will cause people to innovate ideas for apps and things like that that will connect people to gigs,
Hmm.
and that will further make people's money inaccessible, because now instead of the government having to track the person's career and their employer, there is no employer anymore or career. Now they're
Right.
going to have to track like 6,000 different things that each person's
Yeah.
doing,
How are they
which
going to
is,
do
yeah.
that?
So yeah, it feeds itself. And by the way, I do think that Bitcoin will be the one that sticks in people's head. The cryptocurrency that sticks in people's head is the one that they want to put their money into,
Yes.
because it was just the one that was around first,
Hmm.
and it's got the short name that sticks in people's craw. Like
Yep.
the thing that something like Ethereum has going against it is it sounds like a nerd currency, and it also sounds like a threatening thing like Skynet or
Right. But here's the next part. So here's why I'm very, very optimistic about Ethereum.
Mhm.
Um, and you don't even have to be a nerdy like blockchain miner. You could just invest in the coin. They have, there's an actual Ethereum coin and value, and I think it's right now it's like 1900, let's say,
Uh-huh.
is the value. So that's definitely doable. You could spend I think a lot of people can spend 1900,
Uh-huh.
you know, and then just watch and see if it grows or not.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like what makes me really optimistic is it's the world's like I don't want to, it might be the first, but it's like the world's programmable blockchain.
Mhm.
So it builds on Bitcoin's innovations by allowing you to use it for a lot of different digital assets.
Sure.
And a good example of these digital assets is called an NFT,
Mhm.
and that stands for non-fungible tokens. And
Fun.
yes, I know. And these non-fungible tokens, they act as a duplicable certificate of ownership for any assigned digital asset.
Mhm.
So once the code is written for the NFT, it is then minted or permanently published into a token
Mhm.
on a blockchain.
So it can't just be arbitrarily repeated and copied and pasted. That's kind of the
No,
point of it.
right. And this is where Ethereum comes in, because Ethereum's like the world's first programmable blockchain
Mhm.
that's freely available to anybody.
And I don't think you mentioned before, maybe you did, but the blockchain
Yeah,
itself is visible. It's like the
yeah.
internet, where it's owned by everyone, not by a
Hmm.
single person. So
Yes.
anybody can view the blockchain
Hmm.
at any point, pretty much,
Right,
and
right,
see the transactions that have occurred.
right. So that is what, and Ethereum, because it's like one of the first, that's a big advantage right now, because a lot of these NFTs are being created into or published into a token on Ethereum.
Mhm.
And so once an NFT is purchased, the owner has the digital rights to resell, distribute, or license the digital asset as they please. So they essentially have, because it's a unique asset on the blockchain,
Mhm.
and they have the rights to it, like they own it.
Sure.
Which is really cool. You have your own copyright, so you can resell it and make money on this asset by selling it to companies to use. Like,
Mhm.
let's say they want to use it for, I don't know, an advertisement campaign. Like, they want to use that image that that you bought, that GIF that you bought.
Yeah,
Then you can let them use it, but for a fee, and you can make money because you own it.
that's pretty funny.
Isn't that amazing? And then also, so
Strange world.
NFTs, they do not equal each other in value because they're unique.
Mhm.
So, for example, like the highest, there was a huge sale or auction, and they sell these NFTs at auction,
Mhm.
and that's how, and the highest bidder gets this digital asset.
Mhm.
So the highest, um, um, what is it? So do you know the GIF, the neon cat? It's
Yes.
like the gray cat with the Pop Tart
Yep.
body,
Yep.
and the rainbow
Yep.
floating in the background. Yeah. So the original neon cat GIF
Uh-huh.
meme was, they created or the original creator or artist of it created a one of a kind edition, and it was sold at auction for $69 million. That is like
Good Lord.
to date the most expensive NFT ever purchased.
This is like when you see TikTok kids making $69 million.
Yeah, and a lot of like what these NFTs are, like you can like baseball cards.
Mhm.
So there's digital baseball cards that you can buy NFTs of, and it's almost like Pokemon or baseball cards where there's certain rare ones.
Mhm.
So you buy packs in hopes that you get rare ones that you can make money off of.
It's something I don't yet fully understand is how everything is tokenized and used as currency. I know some people trade World of Warcraft currency and things
Yeah.
like that, but I do relate to the idea of a world with broader currencies, more currencies, in currencies that aren't just our current notion of what a currency
Mhm.
is and our current notion of income. People sort of ranking each other. I make this much money. This is
Mhm.
my value meter.
Yeah.
Oh, that person makes that much money. They're lower than me on the hierarchy. Kind of that idea where it's like time is now a currency. Uh, Crypto is a currency.
Mhm.
I'm sure that there's going to be a reintroduction of barter, where
Mhm.
originally we left barter because barter was like, oh, I'll trade you my chickens for your chair. And then it was like, oh, well, I have a chair, but I don't want chickens. I want shoes. And then you go, okay, well, I'll trade this intermediary my chickens for his shoes so that then I can trade his shoes for your chair.
Starts to become
And then it
more and
just
more
gets way, way
complicated.
complex.
Yeah.
But now, uh, the digital world will allow somebody to connect with anybody across the planet
Mhm.
who they want chickens for their chair, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot easier through the internet, and
Mhm.
that's one of the biggest benefits of the cryptocurrency is there's no third party. You want, it's not like Venmo where if you send somebody money, it takes 1 to 3 business days because it's communication through banks.
Mhm.
It's just instant. It's just like sending a text, like boop, there it is.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you want 3 Doge coins for this digital asset? Okay, here you go. Get the asset. You get your 3 Doge coins for your
Mhm.
crypto wallet. That's it.
It's going to be this paradox of I think
And it's
people.
not taxable so long as you can keep accumulating these cryptocurrencies and if the value is going up like with Bitcoin,
Sure.
like so long as you don't take it out of a crypto wallet
Mhm.
and into the physical reality, it's not taxed and you could just keep building on it.
Yeah.
It's almost like lifetime gambling, and like you're seeing your winnings or losings in live time. And like, because if you win the lottery, there's like 2 options, right? A lump sum
Mhm.
or like a monthly payment,
Yeah.
but they're both taxed. Like you're
Sure.
taxed on everything. But this, so long as you don't take it out of the digital space,
Mhm.
it's not taxed. It's completely decentralized.
It is
So
digital empowerment. I mean,
yeah.
that's the I use this word frequently now, empowerment, and I used to find that word very buzzy and annoying, but it really is empowerment. It's not just the old idea was concentrate power.
Hmm.
Now the new idea is connect intelligence
Yeah.
and connect minds together so that they can engage on with things that they find meaningful, and that's empowering for sure.
Yeah,
And
it's extremely empowering because if you think about it, like you don't have to leave that digital space. Like if you
mhm.
accumulate enough, you can. I mean, this leads to, Pat. It leads to being able to buy stuff without the need for U.S. currency,
Yeah.
and it'll probably start in the black market. In fact, it's probably already going on
Mhm.
in the like deep net black market already. Um, but
You think there's been I'm sure you have thought about this, is there had to have been like a major push and leaning on the bad side of cryptocurrency and the black market stuff,
yes,
because if
that's what.
people focus on
Yeah,
that and they get freaked out, then
yeah.
then it becomes easy to
Hmm.
shut that stuff down.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
in most cases, like it's really easy. You just have to, like I said, go on Coinbase, for
Mhm.
example. They don't have all cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
They need to get on somehow.
Mhm.
But I mean, there's so many cryptocurrencies to choose from that are really cheap. Like there's a Litecoin, which
Yeah.
is like 200 something dollars. There's Cardano, um, Dogecoin's like a meme one. There's Ethereum. Everyone knows Bitcoin. There's just like there's so many. It's like you can almost diversify and just hold, like,
Sure.
if they're all like under $1, you could just,
These are
yeah,
true markets where it's you don't have a central entity like a nation and a government trying to like manipulate and control. It's like
yeah, it's
all these
all
things are
community.
happening
digital community
organically,
yes.
and it's like it's spreading out the decision making so that people can make the decisions that are valuable for them and their families and their communities. And all the built-in inertia of these giant structures like corporations and governments or whatever, it's all going to be, it used to be an asset when they had sole control and monopoly, and corporatism was the dominant. Corporatism is the system we have right now. Yes. Corporatism is the predominant mode of doing things, but it's almost like being a fighter. Like bulk is useful to an extent, but if like you get so bulky that you can't move easily, you like, you know, like the Titans in the God of War video games, then like a mosquito can or something
buzz around,
can, so what we've seen, and this is a kind of a bad or a scarier version of networks, but look at the United States versus the Soviet Union, which was like Titan versus Titan. And then look at the United States versus Al-Qaeda, which is like a mega structure versus a network, right? Yeah. It's like
the United States versus Vietnam.
Or Vietnam. That too. Yeah. Like the Vietnamese in the jungle. It's like a network can constantly rearrange and reconfigure, and it's got versatility, and it's got self-repair, and it's got agility that these big structures don't have. So
they have knowledge. Like they have specific knowledge that they can use. And I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's pretty much, I really don't have much to add to that. It's
when people discover this stuff and what it actually means, there's going to be people starting to learn more about it and shift over. It's just, the best argument that the structure of the United States had going for it is like, it's better than a dictatorship. But in the industrial era, that there weren't any other options. It was the best option there was.
Right.
And now it's like, okay, now there are new options, and this is like way not the best option anymore. So, my hope is that the things, the aspects of the United States that are the best aspects will live on in a new form. The best ideas about America, and that institutions that are truly valuable will change enough so that they can compete with new ideas, like the university system, and media as it is, like network news is just going to,
all the legacy media,
all the legacy
that's already collapsing. Post Trump.
It has been.
Like the ratings, they're what was it, the Huffington Post, they had to lay off a bunch of journalists because their major market, that one man, like he's gone.
Media
for now, but
media, gone. Education, and career are like the three things that are resting on each other that enable people to be manipulated. Like people need a source of income, and people need a source of information, and education. It's like you sort of like indoctrinate that, sort of make them say, okay, the state is at the center of everything, and then with media, you just feed them certain information, right?
Yeah.
And all these things are falling apart. And when people are able to get their income from a basic income, as well as in addition to that, things that they're doing digitally, then this is just a freaking game changer. And like, I really thank you for talking with me about this stuff, because first of all, I get tired of monologue. Clearly I get excited about this, and I just can talk endlessly about it. So I didn't mean to
by all means, it's your show. I'm just the guest.
But I mean, it's really like, I want people to get excited about this stuff and see alternatives.
Ways out. Yeah.
Have you seen The Matrix?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen it recently? I just watched it again yesterday.
Not recently, but I understand it.
Okay. Yeah. The premise, for those who haven't seen it or don't know, and the first time I saw it, I just went way beyond me, because I think I saw it probably when I was, I don't know, 15 or something.
So you did see when you were,
and I was just like, these are
back in school,
cool people in spandex suits / dusters jumping around in the air and firing guns,
slow-mo,
exactly,
dodging bullets.
But now I realize that it's like you wake up, you wake up to the systems that you're embedded within, and then the main character Neo is the one. He develops a vision and a sense of purpose and meaning, and other people gravitate towards it, and he kind of like this collaborative group forms where he trying to free humanity basically from the slavery and servitude of this system.
Yeah, the grips of the Matrix.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting because the character Cypher, the bald guy who like tries to sabotage the mission.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, but it is like 20 years old, this movie. So
yeah, well, you should know. It's been talked about to death.
I thought it was interesting because obviously in the Matrix you have ones and zeros, binary computer language, and Neo is 1 and Cypher is 0.
Oh, is that what that means?
Neo means 1, Cypher means 0.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And,
I didn't.
And Neo is like he's tuned in. He's found his enlightenment.
Right, because at the end when he finds the enlightenment, what does Agent Smith looks like? And the environment, all ones and zeros.
Yes,
just like the title.
So Neo can see the
getting excited now.
Yeah, Neo can see the falseness of what's around him, and sort of the
and manipulate and destroy. That's
the
how
the manipulation. In Cypher, like this is the thing about Cypher that I found interesting, and I didn't put all this together myself. I saw a video about it, and then I was like, shit, I need to watch The Matrix again.
Yeah.
But Cypher is a nihilist, and you think about all of the people in the world right now who are nihilistic, who are like nothing means anything, like life is meaningless, purpose, nothing. It's all just garbage. Like Cypher is a nihilist, and he took the red pill at one point. Morpheus gave him the red pill and he took it, and then he was like, now he's regretting it, and he's like, now I'm in this world where I know all this stuff, but there's nothing, there's nowhere to go with it, there's nothing to do. I wish I could just live in blissful ignorance again. So that's the deal that he makes in the movie. But Cypher tries to sabotage because like there are some people who like they truly just believe, and they've committed themselves to the idea that like life is meaningless and nothing is worth pursuing, and people who have committed themselves to that want to see other people fail.
Yes.
And people who have found a purpose, or who have found something to connect to, or something to live for, or something to create, or something to. And so I just thought that was a really cool narrative in The Matrix about how this guy Cypher he tries to like sabotage.
That was a great personification of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of struggle. I thought that was pretty cool.
Wow, that opens up a whole new. I understood Neo and like the one and how he wins, but
he doubts himself though. He searches. He's a seeker, but he doubts himself. And by the way, that's another thing is like I'm reading Beyond Order right now, the second Jordan Peterson book, and he's always talking about this how humans like stories, and we communicate through stories and perceive reality through stories, right? But he's talking about Harry Potter, and he's talking about Quidditch, and you have the quaffle where you try to like there's the bounds of the arena, and you try to score by following these rules, and then the seekers are the ones who go out of the bounds and try to find the golden snitch, which is like enlightenment or whatever you want to see it as,
whatever they're pursuing.
So they leave the borders of the game, they go outside of and they seek this golden thing, which is symbolic of purpose and meaning and enlightenment and all these. So it's like, damn, man,
that's deep.
There's deepness in all these things that I was previously just like, oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I'll never agree with anybody again that says in Matrix is just big dumb blockbuster fun. No, I mean, geez, the Matrix, like, yeah, I mean, at the time, it probably seemed like a big dumb blockbuster, but if you compare it to other blockbusters that that have come out that have not been made by Christopher Nolan, he's the only exception in my mind.
Sure.
So outside of Christopher Nolan, like any other blockbuster that you see is, if you think about it now, this is just like, it's kind of a scary realization by me, but it's like they're so much dumber than The Matrix. And like that generation perceived The Matrix as being like a dumb blockbuster, when like all the themes, like there's a meaning to everything. Like there's a purpose to what the directors did. The Wachowskis, in Neil's name, like Cypher's
Trinity.
Trinity. That is like
that's like a religious Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, or whatever the Trinity is.
Yeah, there's like an underlying symbolism that counteracts the narrative, or goes along with the narrative. That's like it's underlining, but just the fact that it's there, is like pretty amazing. And I don't know how I feel about that now, knowing from you know, what they sell for blockbusters nowadays.
I know. And by the way, I was also just this past week watching Watchmen again, and I read the graphic novel to
Yeah,
Watchmen. But have you? I don't recall it. Have you seen Watchmen?
I have seen the movie Watchmen.
Okay,
Yes.
so like each of the characters in Watchmen, this isn't some. This is just kind of my interpretation. I haven't actually watched a video about this, but I'd like to watch a video about it. But each of the characters is sort of like an archetype or a personification of a different personality trait too. So you have like Ozymandias, who's the intellectual, who's like all of the world's problems can be solved through intellectualism, and then you have the comedian, who's basically amoral,
Hmm.
and he just does whatever he wants and like causes
Right.
chaos.
Yeah, one scene
And
comes to mind. It's pretty fucked up.
exactly,
But
yeah. I mean,
anyway.
there's numerous scenes with the comedian being a
Mm.
total asshole,
Mhm.
and then there's the night owl, who's like who's optimistic and who has a sense of almost like Neo in
Mhm.
that he has like a vision and he sees the good in humanity. And then you have
He's like a benevolent Batman. That's how
yeah,
he came across, like a benevolent Batman.
yeah,
Like very similar, but a Batman was, more optimistic instead
sure,
of pessimistic. And
sure. He's troubled by the chaos, but he sees the good in people and he sees the good in humanity, and
Mhm.
he's the hopeful presence. And then um uh Rorschach is the cynical character. He
Mhm.
represents cynicism, where he's just like, everybody's scum,
Yeah.
everybody's gonna murder and rape and kill each
You
other,
talk
and
about black
yeah,
pilled.
yeah, exactly. He in but he's also has like a little bit of I guess vigilante, I mean heavy vigilanteism in him,
Mhm.
but he's trying to like abide by some code of justice, but he's very cynical.
Yeah, he has his own unique code
He does.
that he follows it through the end.
Exactly. And then the last character, I mean, there's two other characters. I need to figure out
What's the name of the female superhero?
Jupiter,
Jupiter.
Sally Jupiter, and
Okay.
the mother was Silk Spectre. But Sally Jupiter might be some naivete.
Mm.
That might be like what her character represents as naivete. And then Dr. Manhattan is potentially nihilism, because he like knows everything and like there's no mystery to life, so he's just kind of like, oh yeah, everything's just quarks and atoms, so like why does it matter anyway?
I'm just gonna hang out on Mars,
Yeah, exactly.
meditate.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not quite nihilism, because he's also a dude. Like a deep thinker and
Do you
all
think
that.
it's like a
But
take on like another take on like omnipotence or God? Because he's like the most powerful character, bar none.
I mean, his character has so many elements to it. Like there's the fact that he represents based on the fact that Watchmen is told in a historical context.
Mhm.
Dr. Manhattan's character represents the bomb and the power of the bomb, and
Mhm.
how this development and this power was immediately exploited for international use against a foe.
Mm.
Right, so just like they're like, oh, we're going to call this guy, I forget his original name, but we're going to call you Dr. Manhattan, to
Mm.
strike fear into the enemy and to
Mm.
make them think about the United States and how we have you, like you're, what was the thing that the newspaper said in the Watchmen? Dr. Manhattan or God exists and he's an American.
Yes,
That's,
God exists and he's an American.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
oh,
So
classic.
what was your question about Dr. Manhattan? What does he
Well, he kind of
represent?
comes across like almost like a take on, or the author's take on like on omnipotence, on
Yeah,
what that might be like.
yeah. He can duplicate himself and he can see his own past and future simultaneously.
Yeah, you can see the past, present, and future like
Uh-huh.
all at once. I mean, he's very
He's lonely because only he can perceive all of these things, but he's also
he's very distant. He distances himself from humanity, though.
Mhm.
He distances himself from because he had a relationship,
Yep,
and I think he cheated on his wife.
he did.
But
Girlfriend, yeah.
yeah, girlfriend or wife at the time, and he didn't feel anything.
Mhm.
So I think yeah,
He could represent like nihilistic depression in a way, where some people are just like they
or
don't really.
dissociative, like dissociative personality disorder,
Yeah,
potentially, because he's just so dissociated with humanity, essentially.
he's
Doesn't.
do you know there's a word misanthropic, which is like you just see humanity as a scourge, and that's anti-humanism. It's
Mm.
like if you see humans as like a disease or whatever. And by the way, that's what Agent Smith was in the Matrix. Agent Smith straight up said to Morpheus in the first one, he's like, you humans, you're there's one other thing that like you that just moves to new places and replicates and destroys them, and it's a germ. Humans are a germ. And so like
Mm.
Agent Smith's character represents like that certain strain of like basically anti-humanism
Mm.
that has grown more popular, where
He
people are
comes
like,
across to me as like a virus,
yeah, well, I mean, he
or
he
maybe like
can he
a
can replicate himself in the Matrix, but
yeah.
he's trying to basically tell humans, and you're right to
Hmm.
notice that, is that like he himself is kind of like a mind virus, where
Hmm.
he's causing people to basically just like only see the worst of humanity and the worst, like basically become pessimistic about the future and
He's like a
hopeless.
bacteriophage
Yeah.
to a bacteria. Like
Mhm.
that's what he views as a bacteria,
Yeah.
and he views himself as like the bacteriophage virus that needs to eliminate
Mhm.
the germ
Yeah,
or the problem.
exactly. So all of these different things are playing around in the public consciousness right now. And I think that we're moving from like a more nihilistic phase slash, you know, insincere phase to a more sincere, hopeful, meaningful phase, where we're shifting out of the like
Hmm.
everything is broken and everything's falling apart and what's going
Yeah.
on.
Well,
And
you have to see it first
yeah, you have to
in
see,
order
you have to
to
have a vision
see
of
reality for what it really is.
the Zion, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
As the Matrix.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, so obviously, people are going to negatively react first
Mhm.
and lash out. Like you're seeing, I believe riots are happening with Antifa again,
Mhm.
in on the West Coast. I think last night, Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles,
Mhm.
and Manhattan were all hit by protesters again. So I'd be curious to see what happens over the summer, if it's like a repeat, and if it's a repeat, and then in what fashion,
Mm.
or where does it lead. I'm almost really right, because you talk about the hope and
Yes.
people are lashing out. I almost want to see what the reaction is
Mhm.
to this continued like violence in the cities.
Sure.
I want to see, because you're already seeing this in Europe,
Yeah.
less of like a Antifa Black Bloc type group lash out.
Uh-huh.
You're seeing anti-lockdown protesters in Europe,
Oh yeah.
because in their constitutions they don't have the same free speech
Mhm.
clause that we do. So that's what they view as more important, and
Mm.
that's why they're protesting. And then in the US, it almost seems like a 180. You don't have anti-lockdown protesters,
Mhm.
or if you do, they're associated with like the MAGA base,
Yeah.
and like the media spins that narrative of like they're the bad, they're the other,
Sure.
and all these lemmings in society bring that down. And because they do so, the only people who are lashing out are either BLM
Mhm.
or Antifa and these more extremist groups. So now that that's happening,
Yeah.
and there's a specific side clearly being like lied about,
Uh-huh.
and like socially brought down and put down, I'm really curious to see if this violence perpetuates, what the response will be. Because I mean, this is America. I don't believe people are just going to let this slide. Like
There's gonna
I
be
almost
there's
want,
gonna
yeah,
be ugliness.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's creating a powder keg
It is.
or
I
a
mean,
magma
the
chamber in a
powder kegs have already
volcano.
been stacked, but I think that
Right, but I mean, like a powder keg between each other. So like the
Mhm.
right, like on the January 6th riots, like that was against the Capitol and the Senate.
Mhm.
Like they didn't go after like the left necessarily. Like they attacked like the institution that
Yeah.
they perceived wronged them. So I'm almost waiting for like legit clashes between these two.
There's going to be
Very
two forces happening simultaneously. There's going to be, like, you've heard of the term creative destruction before. It's
I don't
almost
think
like,
so.
oh, okay, so it's almost like in between companies and products in the open market, you have creative destruction. So one product overtakes another. The creation of like the Swiffer overtakes the companies that make mops or whatever,
Oh, I see.
like a
Right.
basic example. Or the company that makes computers overtakes all the things that the computer,
Right. Yeah. Like
all
their
the
new,
functionality of the computer.
yeah. So their new ingenuity that's taken off, it
Yes.
kind of eliminates
Yeah. So
the
there's
old.
creation and
Yeah.
destruction at the same
Yeah.
time. So like you're going to be witnessing, because you're more in tune, creative creation and destruction at the same time, and the existing media structure as it's collapsing. And I mean, it is a puppet of various institutional forces that exist, powerful forces, mega corporations, government stuff. It is going to be talking more and more narratives of destruction, and it's going to basically pull people into this doom cycle of being of only seeing that, and like everything's coming to an end, it's Armageddon, it's and so you're going to be seeing more panic and confusion, and people who have been existing with these structures for their entire lives are just like are just going to be dumbfounded by what's going on. But
Yeah.
then there's going to, and that's the noise. And then there's going to be the signal that's emerging, where more people are going to start to engage in this creative process of building this next thing happening. And like, so you can sort of like flip between the two and see the creation and the destruction at the same time. But there's going to be a lot of people who just like, they, they don't they can't perceive, or they're not ready to perceive that this could be like a transformative process. A caterpillar has to die to become a butterfly in a way,
Hmm.
right? It's but like this could be sort of like a metamorphosis or a renaissance or something brand new. But gradually people are going to start to shift into that. There are going to be people who are so sick of the stories of this is the end of the world, it's Armageddon, everything is meaningless, the nihilism, the cynicism, the whatever, that they're going to start to see the power of like this alternative, this signal
Yeah.
that's growing and starting to become more of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think that you're right, and there's just going to be a lot of destructive behaviors that we're going to witness.
Yeah. And, all the more reason to branch out, into the
Seriously.
community. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you'll see it too, because I mean, it's what, like a not pendulum, but like with every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So,
Mhm.
if this lashing out, it leads to more and more violence. Well, what's the opposite reaction? Well, let's get away from the violence.
Yeah.
And stuff like that should be more possible, because you have creative minds like Elon Musk creating new satellite technology called Starlink,
Mhm.
which works best in rural and unpopulated environments.
Sure.
It's just low flying satellites that can give you up to 5G capability.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so, yeah, I
Maybe
think you'll
people
see
can
an equal
invest
and
their UBI
opposite.
into it.
What's that?
Maybe people can invest as they
Right,
realize the
that could be a
potential in
technology.
in
Yeah,
Starlink. They like, oh, I like this service. I'm
yeah,
going to invest part of my UBI into that.
right, yeah. And
So
then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy into more people. Or, by doing that, you give more people access to the technology.
mhm.
But
It's just complex. I'm not expecting people to come to terms with this overnight, but I
no,
just want people to see that there are things emerging here that are like brand new, and there's excitement to that.
yeah, and it may sound to you viewers that we're not like confident, or we're kind of like toe stepping in, but we're just it's just thinking going on right now. It's a
Mhm.
lot to think about. And
Sure.
I think that's the number one thing that I just want people to take away from this podcast and any other that I participate in or that people create, is that it's just you know like uh, like podcasts is a great way to think and bounce ideas off of different people, different groups of people, and see what sticks. So I mean,
Hell yeah.
I, I don't know, anything else to add?
Join the conversation, people.
Yeah,
I think that the more, I keep using the signal
yeah,
metaphor, but the more people that join the conversation,
mhm,
the stronger the signal becomes, and the more creativity comes out of
right,
it, the better ideas emerge, the I don't know, the group on the Nebuchadnezzar in which is the ship in the Matrix. Like we're trying to grow that group of people who's trying to.
Right. Oh, and speaking of growth, where can people find you?
We're trying to stay off the grid altogether. No, I can be found like you say, where can they find me? Like,
If you like what you hear and want to listen to more and more, see Patrick Clerkin's thoughts and ideas, where can they find and
maybe I don't say this enough. Thank you for asking that. Well, I'm trying to have more live conversations on Clubhouse. I will tune into various live stream chats on Instagram, like on the Man vs. Mob podcast account. But I find that, I mean, I'm not a super famous person. I don't have tons of followers, and the followers that I have, probably 80% of them are like not remotely interested. The remaining 20% of them, 15% is like kind of interested.
Well, don't say that. Like where can they find you on YouTube or podcasting?
YouTube and podcasting. So manvsmobpodcast.com, and then just search Man v Mob podcast on YouTube. And by the way, when I talk about my Instagram account before, I'm not denigrating anybody. I'm just saying the reality of, like, I'm trying to build a broader audience, and I'm trying to focus, like, not divide my attention too much, and make myself kind of in these ideas invisible by being too far spread. But I'm trying to find exactly the kind of key area where I can focus.
Right. This is important, man. Yeah. Like, just tell the people where you're at, and they'll come to you. What's the Field of Dream saying? Like, build it and they will come.
Build it and they will come. Exactly.
Let the people know, and the people who want to come will come.
And I think I honestly don't even know. I think I'm still on Spotify. I might have gotten shut down because the last episode that I saw was like months and months. And I mean, I haven't done a new podcast episode in a while, but so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, those are where you can actually find the podcast.
Oh, good.
But we'll expand it in 2021. That's the idea. Actually having more serious conversations rather than just kind of like random probing. So.
Oh yeah, and how do you envision doing that? The more serious conversation?
Kind of networking off of each conversation, if I can, to try to find the next topic and try to focus specifically on groups rather than just, I'm kind of interested in this, I'm kind of interested in that. Just to try to actually have more focus, write my ideas down, and then invite people based on. I would love to talk about Bitcoin with people who know about blockchain, for example.
Yes.
But
right. I know about the uses, but in terms of like writing blockchain or the computer coding, like we would definitely need someone in the know.
Yeah.
I'm not that guy, but
so people who aren't like, who is this guy? I don't want to. People who are trying to have interesting conversations and talk about ideas rather than just be like, I'm trying to promote to 20 million people, because it's not my following. But.
Yeah, or you can also like follow and comment on like certain like more famous podcasters, and that could be a good way to get name recognition.
Yeah, that's I do actually some of that, and I probably need to do it more frequently.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
I think that'd be interesting what you have to say.
I think so too. It's just that I recognize that with all the emails and messages and notifications, whenever that everybody gets, there's sort of, they burn out, and I recognize that I'm kind of I can be long-winded, so making it succinct and eye-catching is kind of where to start.
Right. But
okay.
But that's all I can think of. I know, but no, I'm just thinking, because like, I mean, this is your show, obviously, but if you're on somebody else's show and they were the captain of the ship, focus. I don't know. It's just an idea, but then again, I mean, these are good ideas. I am not you. I just
these are really good ideas. It's really just trying to figure out, because everybody's attention is so divided.
I'm just a guy who likes to talk about interesting stuff.
Just a common blacksmith.
Yep,
I gotcha.
Just a common Dixon, I don't know.
Common Dixon. Tom, thank you so much for coming on. As I said before,
Yeah.
I always appreciate it. And you're always a good sport, and you always have stuff to say. And even when I spring random stuff on you, you're actually really good at being able to respond in the moment.
Yeah.
People get freaked out, but like a lot of people get really freaked out by they want to go scripted, and
Yeah.
you come with ideas, and then you can also go off the script. So like you're way better
Yeah.
at this than you think you are.
Oh, good. Good to know. And yeah, thanks for having me. As always, I'll be on as frequently as you need me or want me. So, I love talking to you. I love being able to express myself in this world where I feel like I cannot. And yeah, I mean, I love it. This is just so much fun. And yeah, I appreciate, you constantly giving me the opportunity to express myself. That's all I ask.
Right on.
Thank you, Pat.
Anything you want to promote, by the way?
You'll
be on Conan next week.
Well, I do have an Instagram. You can find me at tfdixon18 on Instagram, and that's Dixon with an X. I
Shout outs, causes, anything. I know you're not trying to be like a social media personality.
No, I'm not a big social media person. I mean, I would say like if you want a good introduction to independent media, then I would give a shout out to Tim Pool at Timcast, and Timcast in real life. He's a great, I would say even better than like Joe Rogan at digesting the news, reading it to you, interpreting it. And he has a great, Timcast in real life podcast.
Sure,
that it's Monday
IRL, right?
Or IRL,
Timcast
yep.
IRL. Okay.
Timcast IRL on YouTube. And he streams Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and he rotates different guests, and it's a lot of heavy hitters too. Like there's some, like repeat guests, but he gets a lot of different people from different backgrounds, ideologies, and that would be a good place to start. And yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest social media, but I do love to comment when I can.
Sure. We all do.
that would be my recommendation for a start. And of course, the Man v Mob podcast.
Of course.
There's over 100 episodes.
You're looping it.
Come on.
So if you're listening to this, listen to more of it, people.
Yeah.
Next episode, we will be broadcasting from our spaceship, right? So.
Oh, spaceship on Mars.
Things will move quick.
Funded by Dogecoin. To the moon.
To the moon.